call the meeting to order here at the Swanton Village Complex, 121st Street on Tuesday, September 1st at 7 p.m. First item on the agenda is pledge allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Agenda review. Mark, you have
Nothing new.
Nicole?
No, sir.
Kathy?
I'm good, thank you.
Joel?
Under Old Town Business, I don't see Alley Drive, David. We were gonna add that for tonight.
We could add it right now.
Okay.
So you want to,
Yeah.
I don't have anything else
I'm all set?
Heather, you good?
Thank you.
Elizabeth?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay. David, did we get on here just for the task?
I was just gonna bring that up. That's on the second page, under any other business.
Okay, yeah, number 8. Okay. All right. Minutes. Can I hear a motion to approve the August 18th Select Board in-person special meeting minutes?
I'll do that.
So, someone second that?
I can second that.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. And also the August 18th, 2020 Select Board in-person regular meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the 18 August regular meeting.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Ayes have it. 2, public comment. Anybody out there have anything to discuss
Sign sheet.
on the agenda? Okay, just 1 second. Let's get the sign sheet. Okay, I have a list here of people who'd like to speak under public comment. The first name is Anna Morrison. Yeah.
Hi, just wanted to introduce myself because I haven't been to a select board meeting, but I've watched them on YouTube lately.
Yeah.
And I want to thank you for a cottage on Pond Shore we've had since 1962. And I just want to thank you all for bringing in Ms. Bates and really, having some interest in this issue because it's just so mucky and weedy and it gets smelly and it's just really unfortunate. It's such a beautiful lake. So thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Crystal Woods.
So mine falls under number 5.
Okay.
Do you want me to wait?
Yeah, we'll wait. If you're on it's on the agenda, what you want to talk about, we'll wait. We'll talk about it when we get to it.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Joel Kehill, I think, am I pronouncing it right? Right, you, sir.
Yeah, representing Shelton Limestone Corporation, and
Okay.
Village is number 5.
And they're on the agenda too, I believe. Yep. Okay, we'll talk about that. Thank you. Roger?
Yes, just an observation, if I might respectfully share with the select board at your meeting last week. I know that you had received at least one letter addressed to the select board and you folks deliberated to not read that publicly, but that you, of course, take it into your correspondence. Thinking about that later, and Mrs. Morrison just said too, watching meetings on the public TV, I just would make the observation that when such letters, especially when they come in as a request to be read at the public meeting, that when they're not read, the general public is is then not aware of what the nature was of that correspondence. I think to me that's a concern, especially during the COVID situation when people who might otherwise attend meetings are not doing so for safety.
Okay, thank you, sir. Judy? George, what it says? Oh,
I'm sorry, I had the two lists confused.
Okay.
You were just signing in.
you're good, okay. Yep, and, oh, Sandy, yep. Yeah, no,
I signed the wrong one.
what's that? Oh, you signed it wrong, that's okay, no problem.
You can still speak.
Yeah. All right. That's it for public comment then. Pre-law enforcement, you said Chief Dell's not here tonight?
No, he's still under quarantine.
Okay, did he send any reports for us or anything?
No, he'll be on the next agenda.
Okay, I guess we'll skip that then. Announce the new town health officer. And,
And that is Chief Stell.
that'll be Chief Dell, will be the new town health officer. And the new animal control officer is Jim Benson, right? Yeah,
Yep.
Jim Benson. For Old Town Business, discuss long-term water quality issues with Karen Bates. And we have Karen on Zoom, I guess we want to call it.
So, let me use the names off.
Yep. I think it's fine. I mean, if someone wants to get up front and turn it around, but as long as she can hear them, I think we're fine.
Okay, so Karen, we're at you on the agenda, a little earlier than I anticipated.
Yes.
Okay.
Hi.
So if she talks like that, can you hear her?
You hear us?
Hello, this is Karen Bates.
You should probably turn it around so
Well-
the speaker's on the front.
But we need the select board to hear
Yeah,
it
we
too.
can try it, try it,
They're
no
closer
problem.
to the speaker, not
Yeah.
visually. All right.
Yeah, we'll try that.
I don't know, she has a presentation,
Okay.
so.
Karen, can you hear us all?
Yes, I can.
Okay. You folks here, all right? Okay. The floor is yours, Karen. You have
All
something.
right, so I was, let's see, I became aware that there were some concerns on Maypond Shore Road in the shoreline there about the condition of water quality this summer. Mr. And Mrs. George had, or Mr. George had provided some information about algal growth that was resulting in some very horrible smells and also aesthetically that it wasn't pleasing. So we, a few of us at the agency and then Amanda Holland at the Natural Resource Conservation, or the Northeast Regional Planning Commission, provided some information to him, but then I went up yesterday to look at the area, knowing that it didn't represent what had been evident, I guess, last month. And he wanted some answers as to why it was that way, but also he had been suggesting that there were some solutions that we should consider. So I talked to David about presenting some of that information at the select board meeting so that they understood our I guess, identification of the problem and then where the agency would stand in terms of, supporting solutions. Is that generally what you were interested in hearing?
Yes.
So, Maypond Shore, or the Maypond Bay area is part of what we call the northeast arm of Lake Champlain. And for phosphorus goals, we would like the levels to be like 14 micrograms per liter. And readings can be much higher than that. Let's see. You can have a mean of, like this last year, there was a mean of 57 micrograms per liter. So it is much higher than the 14 that would be the goal. It is, and that's through our lay monitoring program that we support. There's a lay monitor, somebody in the community who actually goes out and takes samples for us and also uses SecuDisc. It is a lot clearer, or very clear, in terms of transparency, which is great. But because of the high phosphorus levels, it's going to support algal growth. What we think happened this summer was because of the low water level, you had water that was much closer to the surface, the column, water column was closer to this, well, I guess how do I describe this anyway, because it was very warm and there was a thin layer of water over the surface, there was then the opportunity for phosphorus to actually be released from the surface of the sediment. So not only does it come in during rainstorms because of erosion off the landscape of soils, or just the soluble phosphorus that's in the soils or on vegetation, you also have phosphorus coming out of the lake sediment as well. So that allowed for an easier, or it supported the growth of algae, probably to a greater degree than maybe would have happened if it was a high level of water in the bay. In addition to that, then you also, because you had shallow water, then it could support emergent vegetation because the sunlight could get down to the lake sediment and basically stimulate growth of seeds that were supportive of, that were the emergent vegetation. So with that, then you then got a lot of the algae caught on vegetation, and provided for sort of that perfect storm of when it then started to decay, it smelled horribly, and then also left a scum. I don't know if it was cyanobacteria, which you may have heard about, as well as the regular green algae, which can be more filamentous. But at any rate, it's the phosphorus levels that are really supporting all that growth. We have a plan to address phosphorus levels that's described in our Lake Champlain Phosphorus TMDL implementation plan. The phase 1, which is online, basically provides the general approach, which is to say that we have to reduce phosphorus loading from the watershed and to the Lake Champlain. So the whole basin that feeds Lake Champlain expands much further than the area that anybody here has any responsibility over. But for Maquon Bay, there is a smaller watershed that could perhaps be better managed to reduce the amount of phosphorus that comes off the landscape. But generally, our approach is to make sure that we're working with all communities within the basin. So agriculture, municipalities with developed land, private landowners to help with developed land, foresters, forest landowners to work with silvicultural activities. And there are a number of new laws, as well as programs to support voluntary adoption of these practices that are going to reduce the erosion of soil, the erosion of stream channels, and also just the discharge of phosphorus soluble in the stormwater runoff itself. So there has been a suggestion by Mr. George that perhaps what we need to do is dredge the area, because his main concern is that there's the depth. It's much more shallow than it used to be in the past. And I don't know anything. I don't know with their records but I do know that the water level was much lower this summer than it has been. So that may also be a problem. But with regard to dredging, it's not been a solution we have used. We looked at it in the St. Albans Bay, and in 2007 there was actually a report for St. Albans Bay called Phase 1 to look at different ways to address internal loading, which could be one of the problems here, as I said, not only phosphorus coming from the landscape, but it's just being released from the sediment of the lake sediments. So in that report, dredging was deemed to be too expensive, in relationship to other potential projects. And that's the only project that would help address Mr. George's concerns that maybe it was just too shallow. There was, just to give a sense of it, there was, in 2007, I looked at some prices, and if you just had addressed 44 acres that was sort of in the wetland area of St. Albans Bay, and removed 3 feet, it would have been over $3 million. That was the high end of it. And so to do this area, I don't know how many acres it would be, but I'm sure that it could be closer, much higher than 44. And so it's definitely a multi-million-dollar project, plus having to balance the needs of sort of a shallower bay with the other resources that we have, needing to provide it for waterfowl habitat, fisheries, so, and also the aesthetics. So there are a lot of reasons why the agency would hesitate to support such a project. The money itself would be difficult to come up with, and so those were all the pieces of information that I gave Mr. George yesterday. But we do understand that we need to continue to work with the community to help address at least the runoff. In terms of just filling in of the bay, if that's happening, which it's going to do normally, but it's been accelerated because of our activity on the landscape. Unless it's forest, it's going to have a loss of sediment at a much higher rate. But we know the Missisquoi Bay, for example, which is just north of this area, that 42% of the fines that you get in the bay could very well be from just the stream channel erosion. So protecting the streams to making sure that the flows that go in them are managed, so from developed areas, from agricultural areas, so that they don't increase the speed or velocity of the stream flow, which then results in the erosion. That there's a floodplain so that it can expand and then lose the erosiveness that it might otherwise have. And that can be done by restoring floodplain where we've developed over it, but also in agricultural areas, there are ways to manage streams that have been ditched so that you can have a second terrace. And that means it allows the water again to expand over and beyond the channel to just deposit sediment and also reduce the erosive forces to pick up more sediment. And then we also have practices that we're supporting that are described in our the Lake Champlain Phosphorus TMDL Phase 1, and then also in the, I forgot to add that we describe more specific strategies in the in our tactical basin plans. We are just finishing one right now for the Northwest Regional, or the Northern Lake Champlain direct drainages, Basin 5 we call it, and the draft plan is up on the web page for the Basin 5. So if you were to Google Basin 5, Vermont, DEC, you come to that page and the draft plan is there. And so it identifies the more specifics as to what sorts of practices we and that we are encouraging, along with the regulations that have and the financial and technical resources that are available to support.
She's frozen.
We lose her? Can you hear us?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
She froze.
Is that all?
Yes,
Okay.
I'll stop there.
Okay, all right. Board members? Questions?
I first would like to say I appreciate her coming on to the video chat thing here and explaining all that, and that was a lot of information that, you know, explains a lot of things for me. I personally appreciate you sharing that with us.
Did you hear that, Karen?
Thank you, yes.
Okay.
Karen, Joel Clark, spoke with you on the phone a few weeks ago when we were setting this up. Again, appreciate you taking the time to go out and take a look at Maquon Bay and then to brief us here tonight. If dredging is too expensive a project from the state's perspective, we're talking decades before the phosphorus level is going to lower in that area. Is that correct?
Did you hear that, Karen?
No, I'm sorry, it sort of jolted out. So you'll have to repeat, I'm sorry, Joel.
Okay, no,
So it'll take decades for phosphorus to be reduced to the mean.
yeah, I don't see any short-term fix, because even changes to the practices, I live a mile and a half down the road and I watch what goes down Sucker Brook every spring with the runoff, and that is just more phosphorus that's feeding up into Maquon Bay. And we can talk about changing the farmers' practices and stuff, but at the pace this is going, I think it's unrealistic for us as a select board to talk with members in our community and give them any real hopes of any significant changes in the near future. Hopefully next year, we get more rain and the water level gets a little more normal and the problem doesn't show up till late August or early September. But from a state's perspective, I don't see any significant change in the situation there for decades. And I think you kind of agree with me when you said decades as well.
It will take the point to do, and so, one thing that is the number of acres that are now in cover crop.
You're cutting out on us. I didn't hear what you said the first part, Karen.
I'm going to turn the camera off.
Okay.
That helps.
Yep. Can you hear
Can you hear me better?
Yeah, much better.
Okay, good. That was the problem. So you can do the same too. I don't,
Yep.
it's nice to see everyone, but
Yep.
it'll make for clearer. So anyway, I agree, it's gonna take a long time, but really, what's restricting us or limiting us is the community's agreement and ability to adopt practices that are voluntary. We're all hoping that the rules are in place and we're getting a lot of what's required is out there and there is good compliance. People understand why, and especially with the municipal road general permit, you've got all the inventory, so you're going to start. Well, all towns have already started to improve there. So anyway, that's going to just go along at the pace that it's being supported at, and that's great. But in terms of voluntary compliance, to go the next step, we have resources to support that now. So if the agricultural community wants to take on practices that are fairly acceptable right now, because we're cover crops right now, and new ones like the 2-tier ditches for the ditches, those are, all we need is a yes, and they can happen. And the other thing that I pointed out to Mr. George is that even though people only have a 1/4 acre perhaps, or a 1/2 acre on the shoreline, if they're adding a bag of fertilizer every spring, that's a lot of bags of fertilizer. Can we help encourage to reduce what they're bringing into the watershed, the phosphorus they're bringing into the watersheds? Oh,
Lost you again.
people fertilize.
Oh, Karen, give me a second. Okay, so the camera's off, we'll see if that
Okay.
works.
Can you hear us, Karen? No. Karen?
Not here as well.
Okay, can you hear us now? Karen? Yeah, video.
Can we just finish up with a phone call?
Yeah, we can do that.
Are we okay?
Try that.
For the second, here we go. Can you hear us now?
I hear.
You're in and out, in and out.
The other thing too is we can just. You want to call me?
Yep, we can do that. You have another calling. Calling on.
Yeah, let me find the page. No, I have it
Hear me
here.
now? Still hanging out?
Yeah, I can hear you now. You still there?
Okay,
Yeah, I
here.
am.
Okay.
You ready?
Well, let's try that again.
Adam?
All right.
Hang on.
So did you heard my basic point is that we know what we can do. We just really need community members to say, yes, I'm interested. And because Macomb Bay is puts from a fairly small area, there's a potential that their phosphorus through the communities involved in this area, and it's worth a try. And what that takes is it may take working with Friends of Northern Lake Champlain perhaps to get a message out, or the town supporting a message.
Still there?
does the state have some literature that's available of what the residents can do?
Yes.
How can we get some of that, a website?
Yeah, so I can work with David, I can work with David to get links to the necessary information. And I also think, right, so that he and I can talk about how to do that.
You guys have any questions for Karen?
Maybe not so much a question. I think it could be better served if, once we get past the COVID, where we could have some community forums that's just related to Mequon, the residents. Maybe we can really get some literature and some knowledge, some slideshows, whatever, may be better than in the future until we get there. I think that'd be best, but it may be a little wait before we get there.
Yeah.
I'm more than happy to help out with that. And I know Friends of Northern Lake Champlain, and I think that the Northwest Regional Planning Commission would also be interested in helping, and the Franklin Natural Resource Conservation District. They're all partners with us to help us in this area, and they're all up there with you, so they're part of your community.
Okay. All right. Anybody else? Yeah, just a second, sir. All right. I'm gonna let some of the folks on the floor ask you some questions, Karen, okay?
Sure.
All right.
Karen, you mentioned resources being available now. Those are resources to individuals or resources available to the municipality?
Did you hear the question, Karen?
So, yeah. So, Mr. George, in terms of like working with the agricultural community, individuals can get grants for services. They can also get technical assistance as an individual. And for shoreline owners, again, if they want technical assistance, that's to the individual. It doesn't have to go through the municipality. And I think that talking with Amanda Holland at the Northwest Regional Planning Commission, she may be able to provide the municipality with a sense of what they can provide to the town itself. But most of the resources can go directly to the landowner.
So who should be, you don't take a proactive role in sending out that information, individuals have to request it. Is that correct?
I think what we would do is we would find a way, and I should add that if there was going to be some sort of education outreach, I may work with the partners to figure out how best we can direct those resources. And so in that way, yes, we'd be working with the municipality to figure out what roles each would play. We've often worked collaboratively and to try the information to us. Example that we're all working to make sure that all do. So it almost does not have you're doing there.
Okay.
To me, it's been sort of obvious the past month and a half or so that individuals aren't going to have any respectable impact. So unless there's a commitment from the municipality to sort of spearhead and help organize those efforts and resources that you say nothing would come of.
This critical mass within the community, a percentage of people in a practice, and then becomes a community, something they're part of. And education plan, which may need to evolve to basically show their approval for such an action. Something the community sees as what the individual may need to do. So I think you're right there. And partnership or groups that help direct the municipality very much invited.
Okay.
Two last things, if I might, and then I'll stop monopolizing the floor. Aside from standing on my head I don't know who else I need to speak to at the state level or town level as a Maquam Bay resident trying to express concerns. What is this information? Holland, who I've already spoke to, what information might she be sending me to help me improve my situation? You mentioned that she has information for landowners or shoreline residents. Are you familiar with what that is?
They do help individuals manage stormwater runoff. That's on the Northwest Regional Planning Commission, their website. They also have a really good septic maintenance handbook. So that sort of stuff, like David and I can get together and I'll pull it all together, and we can have a list from all of the partners, including Amanda.
I think that would be best, Karen, if you and David got together and got all these information from all these agencies, so we can give it back to the residents of a better idea of who can do what.
And then the other suggestion or idea would be to talk to another partner to see if we can help them get the grant to help maybe organize and coordinate the education. Lake Champlain Basin Program often supports that, so there would be administrative funds to coordinate efforts to make sure that we've said the right things, and we've talked to the right people to try to sort of develop this sense of community stewardship around lake issues.
So again, who should contact the Champlain Basin Authority?
So I would do that. I'll work, I think this is a really good project, and if we've got the town interested in participating, I can work with the other partners to see who would be interested in developing the grant application in the Champlain Basin program. Because that usually comes out, their RFP comes out in the fall. By town, what specifically do you mean? A concerned group of town residents, or the select board, or what does town mean? Well, I was hoping that it would be, initially at least the town, so that they would provide the information that they thought was most effective. But in developing what this would be sort of a communication plan. We would want the municipality to be, while we developed it, to say, this is what we could do. Since everybody knows to go to our website, for example, we could provide most of the information on our website or links to it. Or we could put information in our water bill, sewer bill, or I'm not sure what you have there for utilities. But there are all sorts of ideas. But it's basically a partnership to make sure that we get the right message to the right people about the practices that they're willing to adopt.
Okay.
Just to summarize all that, then, I guess, in my mind, what I'm concluding is you, Karen, mean the town governing body needs to take on that role. So,
so Karen's gonna
my last question regarded your comments yesterday about emerging wetland. If you could speak to that issue, please.
Yes. So what has happened with the lower water levels and with the addition of sediment over time is that northeast area of the bay, it appears to me to be becoming an emergent wetland. So it has lost some of its characteristics as a lake ecosystem and is now perhaps becoming more a wetland. And so I've suggested that we, from our wetlands program, a wetland scientist comes out and document that it meets the criteria as an emergent wetland. It is then to consider that they're living on that, which has wonderful wildlife habitat benefits. But you just don't want to step out and go swimming. Perhaps you can't go swimming right from your beach.
Good, sir? Thank you. Ma'am, you have a question?
So how far down would those wetlands go, to where people live?
So a wetland meets 3 criteria. That it's got the water, which reduces the ability of a plant to grow, or it limits it to a certain type of plant, which that's definitely there. And you've got the vegetation that is indicative of a wetland area. And you've always got, and then you've got soils that, and we'll skip it back because this is a lake sediment area. But so the reeds that you see growing in that area are plants that we see in wetland areas. And so where I see the reeds growing, I would say that's probably, it could be wetland area, and would be something then that the wetland scientist could look at and decide whether it met their criteria for wetland and not lake. So that's your big difference here, because I think that's potentially, if you wanted to describe where you live, if it's lake shore, it might have one value, but if you live adjacent to a, emerging wetlands or reeds and grasses, then that's a different type of shoreline.
And it has more restrictions, I would imagine, because this means the whole town beach is wetland, and my land is wetland because it's got those tall reeds.
Well, a wetland or a lake, they both have restrictions. So as a shoreland, because you're adjacent to the lake, there are restrictions already in terms of what you can do, and that's under the lakeshore regulations. And then if you're next to a wetland, there are actually there are fewer restrictions. You have more of a buffer that you've got to protect if you live adjacent to a shoreline. But we can discuss those at a later time too if people want more specifics.
And when you say there's resources for individuals, you're just talking about information, right, for individual landowners?
Well, in addition to that, there can be information, technical assistance. There can be information for how to manage stormwater, but also there can be money to help assist in creating, say, vegetation, shrubs, trees adjacent to the shoreline. There can be money to put in a rain barrel to hold the rain that might come off the roof. So it doesn't soak the soils and then pull out the phosphorus and bring it to the lake. So there can be specific projects that are addressed. It depends on the type of project. We have to sort of build a larger project that would support it and find a grant that would support it. But those have happened. Oh, and septic systems. If people need to improve their septic systems because there's leachate actually entering the lake in some way, then there are loans for year-round homes that make it very affordable for people to put in a new system, even if it's an alternative system.
You just said for year-round folks, right?
Yeah.
I did. If it's seasonal at this point, the state doesn't have anything, but there's at least a technical assistance as to what systems would work best. And there can be money to help clean out systems as well, septic systems, if that seems to be a management practice that needs to be encouraged.
Thank you.
Anybody else have a question? Karen?
I had a question. My name's Brian Fiorenza. I know you had talked about the community doing better with reducing phosphorus levels, and I was wondering how much that is a concern versus, it seems like the prevailing winds tend to come out of the southwest and push everything towards the northeast corner of the bay and other bays around, and I didn't know how much of it might be due to things getting pushed into our area.
That's going to be a factor as well. So we haven't done the modeling, so I can't tell you what number it is, but I do know that you've got three streets that flow directly into the bay from just the Swanton area. So in that way, you could have more reactive phosphorus come in if it's in soluble form from those streams that might push an area into an algal bloom versus having phosphorus maybe moving in on fines that are blown into the area from other areas. This is all, hypothetical. I can't tell you exactly how much it is going to be make up some of the phosphorus in the water.
Okay, it just seems like there's a lot more muck from dead algae and weeds than there is actual algae and weeds in the area.
So the muck, definitely, if you have an algal bloom, it's got to die for plants. And so that muck then is decomposed algae, and then it then gets further eaten by microbes into organic matter that then is taken up again by the weeds or by the plants that might live there, or by the plankton that feed the fish. So it's part of a cycle. It's not so much that we're worried about that, is we don't want any new, the limiting factor for the growth of the algae is the phosphorus itself, which we know comes into the lake at a higher load than it should for us to meet the water quality goals we have.
You good, sir? Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah.
Hi Karen, this is Michelle Nordberg. Thank you for your time today. I just have a simple question, I hope. Is there a community along Lake Champlain that has comparable phosphorus levels and water quality that has approached this particular issue, whether as a communication plan or a community grant effort?
So Lake Carmine, which is not really answering your question, is really the first attempt we made with the resources that we had to develop, I guess, what do I want to say, improve the partnership to allow for communication plan to happen with a lot of different partners taking on different roles. And I'm trying to think within Lake Champlain, there may be other basins or other areas that I don't manage, I don't develop plans for where this has happened. Down in the south end, there are 4 associations. But I can't give anything specifically within the lake. The islands, there are some associations that will provide education to members that also have the weed, aquatic weed management part to it. But we're forgetting St. Albans Bay, aren't we? So they have had a lot of education there, and the St. Albans Area Watershed Association has provided input in education to people there. We did a big project to encourage people to look at how they manage their lawns a while back. And every year, the St. Albans Area Watershed Association does invite speakers in to talk about or encourage group management of the landscape.
Thank you.
But St. Albans and Georgia did cut the weeds, right? They did a weed cutting thing.
Yeah, so St. Albans has a program to manage the weeds. They have a boat that will cut the weeds periodically, and the town, I think the town basically manages that. I'm not sure the association assists with that. It's always large, but they've done a good job in that partnership.
And are you saying that was not successful?
Oh no, they've done that. That's a different type of plant. So they've got milfoil there, and some other plants that grow from a big depth. And it's not called emergent vegetation. It's floating aquatic vegetation, or the milfoil, which basically just floats under, or is a long stem plant that floats under the water. So you can cut those and take them out of the water, allow for improved boating in the area and swimming in the area, but it would be hard to move down vegetation and get sort of the same satisfaction. And I'm not sure was not really that program. We do support with grants to cut down emergent vegetation. It was for the invasive plants, the Eurasian milfoil, which has a greater range habitat because it's much more competitive than other aquatic plants.
Anybody else have a question?
To piggyback on Brian's question about the winds bringing stuff to the north, to the bay, yes, going out in our water, trying to improve water movement, you can rake all sorts of seaweed that isn't attached to the ground, that's floated in or been blown in from elsewhere in the lake. Would not removing that, vacuuming it up, if you will, would that not help reduce the amount of material that's rotting and also improve water movement and flow?
So the goal of the Agency of Natural Resources is to reduce the phosphorus levels, and that then directly affects the amount, the algal growth. So we're not, I guess that's our main focus.
So the main thing basically
The algal
is,
doesn't grow to begin with.
I guess it does seem to some of the folks in our area that if there was some mechanism or some way to remove some of that material, that it blows north, we collect it all, and it clogs and rots. So, and I can appreciate this agency is their mission is to reduce phosphorus, so I'm asking a different question, I guess, but are you aware of any resources, Karen, that we could tap that would consider initiatives in that direction?
No, I don't know of it.
have you ever heard of anybody cleaning up this stuff along the shoreline that does any good, Karen?
My sister and I do it on my parents' shoreline.
Yeah, well, that's kind of what I was thinking, is that homeowners clean up their shoreline.
And the town of St. Albans does it in their bay.
Yeah, they've got a tractor, but you know, the ground is stable enough to be able to do that. I got a feeling, you can tell me, how soft is that ground outside your place? You sink down, you walk in it and stuff?
A bit, yes?
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole, going along that nice sandy beach and with that machine, I saw it operate the other day, that's nice. I'm not sure, I don't have the answer right now whether anything like that would work up in McQuam, just because of the difference of what that tractor drives on. It's a pretty easy little drive for that tractor on that.
So I guess my question is, if you cleaned up the shoreline somehow, it still isn't gonna stop the green algae from being in the lake, correct?
No.
Because the phosphorus is causing the green algae in the lake, if I'm reading what you're saying. Correct? Okay. Cool.
You know, and the one, I guess, word of caution, even though, because where I pick it up, that there's not the cyanobacteria, I would always be cautious under it. I would look to see whether cyanobacteria perhaps had been in the water before I went to pick up weeds. And we have a cyanobacteria tracker that the Department of Health manages, and we participate in supporting along with other partners. And there are a couple sites on Mequon Bay, so there must be some volunteers who sample water and look for cyanobacteria. And so if you knew where that site was, then you can Google cyanobacteria tracker Vermont, and you'll get to it. And then you'll get used to, you'll get a sense of what a wound would look like, and also if when it happened recently.
Okay. Joel, you have a question?
No, this isn't a question for Karen, but there's certainly a fair amount of interest. I think it's only gonna increase at what's going on Palm Shore. And talking with Kathy, you know, even out on Hog Island, there's issues with water quality and what happens seasonally. I really think that we shouldn't necessarily wait until the end of COVID because we don't know when that's gonna be. I don't see why we couldn't sponsor a forum, use the town garage because we can seat a fair number of people at a good distance, and get 2 or 3 of these agencies to come in and talk to us. And just get us all smart. I'm not sure that, you know, how much we can do, and I'm one of them skeptics a little bit about what can and can't be done, but we can all get a little smarter and hear what some of these other agencies have to say. I heard Northwest Regional Planning, Friends of Lake Champlain, and some others, and you know, set something up maybe for late October. Now, I know what, I'm stepping down here at the end of the month, but that doesn't mean I wouldn't, you know, assist in trying to put that together, and I certainly think it'd be worthwhile for people. We're not gonna get all the answers tonight, but we could all get a little smarter on what's going on. And some of these other agencies, when we contact them, may tell us a few other people to contact who might come and present some info. I just throw that out there.
I support that.
I'm certainly happy to help
Okay.
find someone.
I'd like you to work with David, Karen, and see how many, all these agencies we can get to work together on this and see where we can go from there.
Sandy, would you say something?
That sounds great.
Did you have a question, Sandy?
No, I just wanted to speak to what Joel was just speaking to. Friends of the Northern Light have been very helpful. She mentioned them. They've done a lot of work in this area. Ken Henderson is the chair. Roger Greenhill was part of that group. I think it's called Farmers Alliance. And they're very well connected. This is the first year that they haven't had a dinner up at the Tyler Place because of COVID. But every year when they're up there, they bring resources from all over the state. So I think that Ken Henderson would be very helpful.
I agree. He has already gone to visit Mr. George's property, so he knows of the situation.
Okay, perfect. Board members, any more questions for Karen?
Nothing, thank you.
Anybody else has any questions answered? I think we're good. Thank you, Karen, for answering questions and your speech.
You're welcome.
Okay.
My pleasure.
Okay, thank you.
Be in touch.
Yep.
One item just mentioned, I want to clarify, that gentleman, the head of Friends of Northern Light Champlain, copied down incorrect address, so he never, the planned time and date that he was going to visit my home, he wasn't there, and when I later called him, he said that you know, that he had gone to another house where there was no automobiles in the driveway and so forth. So he looked at the lake, but and when I spoke to him, he didn't have time to chat that day, so I have no further information.
We'll let David work with Karen, and hopefully he'll be one of the ones that we can get to come together and hopefully get some more answers. Thank you all for your questions and concerns.
And thank you for arranging.
Yeah, no problem. B, point replacement for VRB vacancy. Wow.
You want to mention?
Yeah, I was just gonna page here. Yep. That's what we need.
Based on the fact that we've got something from the zoning administrator that the zoning review board met, and the board is to recommend Jim Pratt, I'd like to make a motion that we appoint Jim Pratt to the vacancy on the development review board.
I'll second that.
Okay, any other discussion?
No.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you very much, Jim, for stepping up. Appreciate it. Review and sign revised letter for Vermont DOT Secretary Joel.
If I may, I'd like to start. I've reviewed this letter several times, and I support the information that it's stating here and how it would promote economic development in our community. I know we're pushing to have it signed or pushing to have a decision made by the state. But I think we need to take into consideration that we have been in a state of emergency. He has been in a state of emergency as well. And I feel like we need to redefine our introduction to acknowledge that so he can further make the decision.
You're saying that we should put something in there, we understand you've been under a great deal of stress with the COVID and busy with that, is what you're saying?
Right, and it might make, instead of...
Make it sound a little more pushy?
Yes.
That is a good idea in my opinion. I agree with Nicole.
I appreciate the suggestion. I am fine with the letter as is because there's been plenty of discussions with that office within the state. If this was a complicated land transaction, that would be one thing. This is more a battle over trying to prevent something happening there by an individual within Mr. Flynn, Secretary Flynn's department. And it's something that could easily be worked at the person's home. I think we started this well before COVID, so they're aware of it. And it's time for the state to make a decision, and it's time to get the assistance from Secretary Flynn. I'm good with the letter as is.
Yeah, we did just make it go back and change the wording.
Yeah, that was to make it much more pointed on the end of what we're trying to get the state to do. Because the state has no interest. If they bought that land for $1, they're not going to do anything with it because it won't fit in any development. This one is so straightforward. It should have been signed by the state months ago, but it wasn't.
I agree. I think we need to move forward as it's stated. I mean, even on here, it's February 13th, is probably discussion started even before that. I think that it's time to move. If we don't hear nothing fairly soon, we can take the next steps and get representatives involved and go up the chain because it is economic development for us. I understand what you're saying, but again, just this alone, you're talking 7 months alone just to get an approval for a small piece of land. It's really hurting us as a community. I understand that they've had a lot going on. I think we all have, but we all need to make decisions in our everyday life.
Understand.
Do we need to vote on this?
Yep.
Okay. All right, any motion to accept this letter that we just sent? Second?
I'll second it. Hey, David, if we just at the top.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, the T is missing on the top of the letter, unless it's just a print.
I think it's just a misprint.
It may be.
on-
I just want to make sure.
'cause
Yeah,
I have
that's
another copy
fine. You-
where-
Our top versus on.
Yeah, and the signature's on the second page, so I could just add the
Just
T,
wanna make sure.
wouldn't be a problem.
Any other discussion?
I don't know how
All
that
in favor,
happened.
signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
Well, you have to sign it now.
Last one. Pass it down.
Where your name is.
MPG Highway Grants.
That's me.
Yeah, go for it.
The municipal planning grant, the MPG, was the one for Marble Mill Park. So we completed, that's the one that Betsy worked on, Betsy Fournier. And that's finished. I submitted the request for reimbursement, and we should be getting around $6,000 as a final payment on that one. And also the one for South River Street
Official signature.
is completed. All the work was done there, and the bills were paid. So we were able to file for reimbursement. You have to have everything paid before you can get reimbursed by the state. And we should be getting back around a little over 158,000 from that one.
Okay. Got
Yeah,
it.
that's it.
Okay. E, Alley Drive.
Okay. Yes, we had talked about the possibility of taking over each 36 residents at Alley Drive. And one of the first things we asked the folks petitioning us to do that was to go out and take some tours. So you have a separate piece of paper, or you're getting a separate piece of paper handed to you that says SW Cole Engineering on the top.
Yep.
And this is the report that we received regarding the aggregate asphalt thickness, whether or not there was fabric underneath. They cored down. Kevin had marked out 7 locations, and throughout the course of the day while they were coring, I told them they could knock it down to 5 based on what they were finding in some places. According to the drawings, it should have been 18 inches total of aggregate. Some places the lowest is 13, the highest is 22. Pavement thickness is pretty much 1.5 inches at all 5 cores, although that asphalt was placed several different times. You can tell by looking at it. So it's nowhere near the 3 inches that was required. That was part of the reason to get this done. So that's just some of the facts. The back of the sheet shows where the cores were taken in relation to the homes on Alley Drive. If we were to propose a new road in there and follow our standard for road and bridge design, we would be looking for close to 18 inches of aggregate. I'm pretty comfortable when you drive in there and you take a look at the loop, that there is little to no settlement in that area. That's had traffic on it for several years. I think it can support the loads of the cars that are in there and the occasional, delivery truck and that sort of thing. But in all fairness, I have to say it does not meet the standard. But looking at it, with the exception of the poor asphalt that was done at the very beginning, and they're already looking at having a paver come in. I consider it still an area that we could look at taking the road over as long as we came up with stipulations, like we're not interested in maintaining the storm drain. That sidewalk has to be fixed, and again, they've agreed to fix that, but we should get that all in the writing document if we're gonna do this. So that's the report. Al's here tonight. Al, you may want to share a few things, and if there's any other questions, I'll be glad to answer them, from my perspective.
The areas that had the least amount of gravel were on bedrock, and we're limited by the topography of the lot, so we don't get water inside the garages, but it's on solid rock. There is the fabric everywhere. So we did quite a bit of blasting for the infrastructure, but we felt the road was solid on ledge.
Basically, I think it's up to the board to decide whether to go forward. If the decision's to go forward, I would have a draft agreement. And I really think the agreement has to be with a homeowners association.
Yeah, you did mention that at the start. My concern was that we wanted to go ahead and put the last coat of pavement on. I didn't want to do that without at least addressing it to you if you had any specifics that you wanted changed, such as, the sidewalk. I guess the code will be 3 inches or 4 inches, I can't remember now. I think it's 4 inches that you wanted or were on the plans.
Yeah, if you open that up, I think it shows 2 and 1 for the 2 surfaces, but we can talk about that.
Yeah. If we have 1.5 now, it would be acceptable to put another 1.5 inches on top of that, so we have a total of the 3.
Yeah, what's that?
The asphalt you're talking about?
Right.
Yeah. What's the condition of the 1.5 inch asphalt that's there? Is it broke up or is it all together?
I'm sorry?
What's the condition of the asphalt that's there now? That the 1.5 inch is it broken up or is it all?
No, it's not broken up. There was one area that had less than ideal type of pavement, but that's maybe 30 feet long. The rest of it is been pretty solid. And as you enter in, that has not broken up since 2006 when that was first put in. There has been some settling, so that has to be recontoured so that there's a certain distance in the front, it says it on the plan, where the water has to be pitched toward the road, and the remainder goes towards the retention pond.
And that's all part of your discussion?
That will be done, absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that would all.
And we voted on it before to take it over with the restrictions that these things were gonna be repaired.
Well,
Correct.
I
as long
think
as
part
they
of
meet
it
the
was
core.
ending the core.
Individual court, yes.
Yeah,
So,
just to go back, if my memory fades me sometimes, it was just the understanding of maintaining the road of plowing it. It wasn't maintaining the road of the pavement in the future.
Would you say that?
Just the plowing the road, not to maintain the pavement of the road in the future. If the pavement breaks up, it's not on the town to repair it, it's on the association.
We're trying to do our level best before we turn it over to the association.
Yep.
But before we did that, we thought we'd meet with you, try to get it to the standard that you would do it. But earlier when we spoke, I thought you were taking over the roadway maintenance as well as the plowing. That was the original discussion.
I believe
That was my
that's
understanding.
any road we take over the asphalt and
Right.
the maintaining the road.
But you were not
Yeah.
going to take over the drainage.
That's right. No storm drains or water, none of that stuff.
Or the sidewalks.
Yeah, or the sidewalk plowing.
Or the sidewalk.
That wouldn't be any of us, so. But,
Yeah, I think you run into issues if you're gonna plow and not
yeah,
maintain the road.
yeah.
Are there other areas or associations that we have taken over? My concern is the residents are paying into an association and we're maintaining the road. Are there other areas that we're doing the same thing?
We took over Cedar Ledge 3-4 years ago, down off Canal Road. That was a private development, so we took it over.
I'm just trying to make sure that we're fair to all.
Yeah. I mean, that's just a straightforward road development, doesn't have any water or sewer in the road or nothing, but.
Yeah, in a previous meeting, we passed out the list of ones that, have potential to come talk to us. Most of them, the conditions and stuff are that, wouldn't make that recommendation until they invested a fair amount of money. This one with a good paving job could be a good one.
Okay. So do we need to make another motion to go forward with this? Okay. I'll entertain a motion to go forward with the, taking over the road maintenance as far as the plowing and maintaining the asphalt part of the road itself.
James,
Of course, the restrictions.
no, the motion would be to start the process for the town to accept it as a town road. There's a process you have to go through to do that.
Okay.
So that's what you would be doing now.
Okay.
I would just like to chime in, the first step will need to be that the asphalt gets put on there to our satisfaction and that we have an agreement with the homeowners association of what we're doing. And then, once those two steps are complete, it's a formal process to take the road over to the state.
Yeah, I mean, so technically, you could just wait until what Joel just mentioned is done, and then make the motion to go through the process to accept it.
I think what we need to do tonight is decide whether we go forward, seeing that we've got the test results. And we can speak with Al real quick, what we're gonna do as far as the asphalt, and then next meeting, have a draft agreement.
And the paper has already came last year, and then we decided let's do this through the town first. And I will be meeting with him again if one of you want to be there, so he can explain what he's going to do. And then we'd like to get it paid, hopefully sometime in September. And he's aware that he's kind of made room for us on the schedule to do that. He is coming back up here. I was going to meet with him. Would any of you want to be there?
Yeah, I'll finish that.
Okay.
I'll bring it in. Yep.
I'll connect with you then and see what will be a good time. Go from there.
Now, is the whole development getting paid with a top coat, or is it just that?
Yes, the whole development.
The whole thing, okay.
It should, it's
Yeah.
only an inch and a half.
Yeah, exactly.
We're shy on our asphalt right now.
Okay. Okay, so now,
We'll have a draft for the next meeting,
Well,
but in the
so we don't
meantime,
need to
we'll work on the pavement piece.
That'll be fine, I'll try to get that done within the week.
Good.
Will you be more available the early evening, like 5:36, or does it work better for you in the
Over the
day?
next week and a half, I mean, you just get it scheduled, I'll get there.
I'm sorry?
I said, over the next week and a half, if you get it scheduled, I'll make a point of being there.
Okay.
Depending on your favorite availability, we'll make it happen.
Yeah. I'll meet with you tomorrow and figure that out.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, just, at this point, you could wait till the agreement comes
We're all
back.
agreed to go forward with it, we need the pavement, and we need to come up with a written plan.
All right, we'll meet and hopefully get that done this month.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill. Five new premises, a quarter blasting complaint, 19.
Yeah, I can start the discussion. Over the
Okay, go for it.
past few weeks, some residents in the area of the quarry have been complaining about the blasting and claiming that walls have been cracked and foundations and so forth. And then a few days ago, the petition that you have in the packet was submitted by the folks, I presume, in that neighborhood, asking the select board to do different things and to, I guess, to alleviate the issue. I checked with the state and I couldn't find anything available there that showed any type of regulation. I did call Trampas and asked him if there was any Act 250 permit for that, and he told me that it's been there so long it's grandfathered. There was no Act 250 permit needed because of the grandfathering. And he also told me they have a monitor there from an independent company that measures the vibrations when they blast and that they're within the acceptable limits. And also that the insurance company for the company has checked out the alleged damage in different homes and didn't attribute any that they saw to the blasting that's taking place. So the rest is in the packet that you have there. They also added something about dust in there.
Okay. Did Mr. Tavares get a copy of this?
Oh, yeah.
You have a copy of it, okay. You may ever just speak about that, correct?
Yeah, so, my name is Crystal Woods. I'm a resident on 4th Street in Swanton. I've been there, I bought the property about 9 years ago. I also grew up on Ferris Street, and Swanton, Shelburne Limestone has been there forever. Their revenue for the town of Swanton, in no way are we trying to get rid of them. But there's got to be some common ground with the damage to the properties and especially if you live on Ferris Street. Ferris Street and the end of LaRoche Street is awful. I went around, there's 50 signatures at least right now, probably more, but you know, with the COVID and limited time, I work too, so I only had so much time. So I got 50 signatures of people. And when I spoke to, so I was actually the one that they came and they looked at the damage to my house. They came and put a seismometer, but they're not doing it in the house where it is shaking everything inside the house. You have to be there when this is happening inside the house. And this is in every property from Ferris Street, LaRoche Street, Bushy Street, Grand Avenue, 4th Street, and they're saying that, I spoke to Will Maynard, which is their company's manager, and him and I have had many conversations. he put me in touch with the guy that came and they said the damage didn't occur because I was half a mile from the quarry. I'm not half a mile, I'm 0.3 tenths of a mile from their quarry. The damage ranges from anywhere from cracked foundations, drywall cracking, you name it. There's furnaces, water pipes, sewer pipes that have been broken. As a matter of fact, even the town has put in a new water line in the winter. So, now, houses do age. A lot of the houses in Swanton are older homes that have grown up with the quarry. But as the quarry purchased Upper Ferris Street, the damage became worse for our properties. Our property values are decreasing. Nobody's going to buy our properties with that on the doorstep. The dust is, we're breathing that in. It's a carcinogen. If you look up on any of the Glasson websites and stuff, those are known carcinogens. There was one morning that they blast, and it was really what we would call, most of the residents call it like an earthquake, because we had a magnitude 3 in Canada. We never felt it because we are so used to the limestone blasting that it just was kind of, oh, the limestone did that, so, you know, we didn't even notice it. Again, we're not asking to get rid of the limestone. We want to work with them. They have been in the community for a very long time. But our properties are not only going to, if they blast like they've been blasting, our properties are not going to last. And they say, no, we didn't do the damage. Then the residents have no way to, other than fixing their property themselves and shoveling money. And so a lot of them are older citizens in this community that can't afford to do that. Furnaces, water pipes, those are expensive. So either, you know, there are a couple of things, and yes, apparently they have seismology at the Swanton Armory, located on Ferris Street. According to them, they're within regulations of what they are, but structural damage occurs with the vibration at 0.2. So, and that's off the website that I looked up for blasting, and within the guidelines, because there's this federal guidelines of fair blasting, and now those are all kind of within the guidelines. So it says 0.2 to a structure 3, which is a wooden, like ours. A structure 2 is a masonry, and then there's a steel frame, which is a structure 1, and then there's a lower one that's a structure 4, where damage occurs. There needs to be some common ground that, you know, either the residents, half of Ferris Street wants tax cuts on their property. Half the other residents don't know where to go and thank me for starting it. And again, I'm not trying to stop a business. We want something done that protects everybody. That they can operate as a business, but we can live as residents and not have our houses damaged in that process. But there's also the dust that layers around that area. And that those things need to be monitored. They are part of their operating permit that they have in existence until 2025. That was just renewed in May, I believe it was. And so the air particularly people are breathing and breathing into their lungs. And those things we need to also think about for our community. You won't have a community if everybody's gone to pay taxes. So it'd be fruitless to have a business in town that, when you have no citizens in it. So, and a lot of the community in Swanton is an older generation. So, you know, they already have breathing issues, or they have some kind of underlying health issue. So we want to make sure that we're taking care of our residents as well. And I do have copies of the petition. I know Nicole Draper, her email was not.
I have it in front of me,
You
ma'am.
have a copy?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
I also have any copies of their blasting permit, if you guys need, which I did send that along with the emails as well. And, you know, I hope that we can come to some fair agreement and that works for everybody as a solution. Because we can't live like citizens like this anymore. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Byer, would you like to answer all of that?
Joe Cato will answer for me.
Okay.
My name is Joe Cato. I'm the attorney for Shelburne Limestone Corporation. And as David mentioned, Trappist received this petition yesterday. So we really, and it's very general, so it's very difficult to respond. It's interesting to note that the select board was copied and various state agencies and federal agencies were copied, but Ms. Woods didn't provide us with a copy. We had to get our copy through David. So, and as Ms. Woods says, the quarry's been there, and it's been there before Shelburne Limestone owned the quarry, and it's been operating. And you know, the corporation realizes, and Trappist as the president realizes, that we operate close to some residences and we try and do everything, they try and do everything they can to ameliorate any impact on those residents and not go through some of those. It's a little difficult, excuse me, to respond to the specifics in this petition because they're very general and they are without dates and without specifics other than general allegations. I would discuss a few points of the select board. First, there's allegations in the petition that are simply not accurate, and we have documentation we put together today to present to the select board. In a number of places, Ms. Woods claims that there are multiple blasts every day. That's on page 2. The blasting is constant. She says that on the top of page 3. She says in page 4 that the blasting begins early in the morning, does not end until 4:30 or 5 o'clock every day. I have copies for, under federal regulation, the quarry has to keep track of every blast and maintain a blasting report. So we've gone through the blasting records from January 1 until, I think the last one we have is August 28th, which is basically 7 months of blasting. And in that time, we had 102 blasts. That averages about 4 blasts a week over that time period. It's not every day. There are 4 or 5 days in this period where there are 2 blasts a day, and that was it. The blasts last maximum 3 to 4 seconds. So we're not talking about hours and hours of blasting here. And so we have copies for the select board if they can handle that.
Thank you, sir.
And on this list is the date of the blast, the time of the blast,
Thank you.
going back to January.
Thank you.
Ms. Woods talks about alleged damage to her property and cites some statistics. There are a couple different measurements, and the U.S. Bureau of Mine Safety has done extensive tests and developed standards and done testing on blast damage and what causes the blast damage. Vibration of the blast is one of the principal senses that we as people, when we're near a blast, you feel the vibration. And one of the interesting things is that we are much more sensitive to the vibration from blast, that is people and animals, than structures are. And the measurement, one of the key measurements is something they call peak particle velocity, PPV. And people sense the vibration of a blast at a measurement 0.01 inches per second, PPV. The mine safety calculation of damage to structures begins for older structures that have, and the principal damage, the first thing to occur in a wood structure for damage from blast is cracks in the plaster or the wallboard. Plaster lagging, finished inside, cracks earlier than wallboard. But the measurement for cracks, according to the mine safety people, is 0.5 inches per second ppb. So that's a magnitude much greater in terms of the velocity and in terms of the blast than you can sense in vibration as a person. Wallboard gets damaged potentially at a rate of 0.7 inches per second ppb. So that statistic, given the location of where Ms. Woods' house is, was one of the bases for the denial when the complaint came in. And interesting enough, the time that she complained, and we take complaints, individuals call this quarry and complain. There's a complaint form completed. And one was completed when Ms. Woods called in on the 22nd of May. And I have for the board a copy of the complaint and a copy of the blast report from that day. So I'll give you that, and then I'll just quickly go through what.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Well, the first page is the actual complaint. And what happened is the complaint came in and went up to the company, and that was then referred to the insurance company, and subsequently the insurance company sent an adjuster and looked at the house and made a determination that they didn't feel that the cracks that she showed them were the cause of any blasting. If you look at the blast report, and specifically the second page of the blast report, the PPV number on the left-hand side is 0.60, which is very much substantially below. It's half of what the mine safety people have said would cause potential cracking of lath and plaster, and even more so, cracking in wallboard. So that was one of the reasons we believe the insurance company determined that the cracks that she showed them were not the result of any blasting by the car. There's no question that when they blast, people that were in the vicinity can feel the vibration. But that doesn't mean that there's damage to the building. And we've gone back through the records, and in 10 years, other than Ms. Woods' complaint, and one other complaint about 3 years ago, we haven't had any complaints. So if people are having their property damaged from blasting, we can't do anything about it unless they tell us. And notwithstanding what Ms. Woods represents, we haven't had those kinds of complaints in any kind of numbers. One of the other complaints, I think not a major point, but she raises it in her petition, that before the blast there's beeping. There's an alarm that goes off. Well, that's an alarm that's required by OSHA, the federal regulation. I mean, nothing we can do about that. They also, if they live close enough to the quarry, will hear the backup alarms on the equipment that's working in the quarry, depending on the wind and the weather conditions and the overcast and a lot of environmental factors, and where the vehicle is actually working. And again, those are backup alarms that are required by regulation, and there's nothing we can do about that. As far as the air quality, as Ms. Woods mentioned, Shelburne Limestone just received May 29th the renewal of its air quality permit. This is issued, I think they're issued for 5-year terms. By the Department of Environmental Conservation of Vermont, its Air Quality Division. You have to apply 6 months before the permit is issued, and they go through a lengthy process. And one of the things that has to be done is they have to do emission testing for air quality on all of their equipment and all of their facilities on the quarry. And when Shelburne Limestone did that for this quarry. There was a person on site from the state observing all those tests. They want to make sure that the tests are being properly done and that, in effect, the results aren't being fudged. And Shelburne Limestone at the Swanton quarry passed all of those tests. That's part of its application process. Additionally, and again, this is sort of a technical thing, but when the notice gets published by the air quality that they're going to issue a permit or renew a permit, there's a time for public comment as to whether or not there's any issues with neighbors, with municipalities, where the operation is. And the division received no public comment. Issued the permit, May 29th. There's a 30-day appeal period. Anybody that contests the issuance of a permit can appeal to the environmental court. Nothing, that permit had not been appealed. I mentioned that during the application file, we did testing, and it was all passed. Interestingly enough, and I'm not sure whether the board has a copy of the permit. The town probably got a copy of it.
I think it's included in what she sent us.
Yes, we have a copy of it.
Okay. One of the things that's it's interesting about the air quality piece is that NSHA, which is the federal mine safety organization, which they're also subject to regulations, and they're also subject to periodic inspections, a couple times a year usually. And one of the inspection requirements of NSHA is that at least one or two of the employees have to wear some sort of a device that detects air quality while that employee is working in the quarry for that time period. And there are standards. And one of the major things they look for is silica content in the air. Fortunately for the town and fortunately for Shelburne Limestone, the silica content of the stone that's mined here at Swanton is almost non-existent. So that's a major concern. But nevertheless, these tests, which are administered every year by NSHA, they've always passed. They've always been well below the level that is acceptable. And this is for people that are actually working in the quarry who are exposed to a much, much higher degree of the dust and the stone than anybody living outside the quarry. One of the other issues is that in the state permit, there's a couple points that I would point to the board. On page 11 of the state permit, the state concludes, based on the test results, that Shelburne Limestone is a non-major emitter. There's different levels of regulation by the state air quality people. If you are a major emitter, then the standards and the requirements that you have to meet are they're a lot more. So based on the test results, the air quality people determined that Shelburne Limestone is a non-major emitter. On page 12, they make the statement and conclude that the emissions of the corporation do not violate any national standard of air quality. On page 17, deals with hazardous air contamination, and again, the permit concludes that they are below any federally mandated level of those permits. The dust in the petition seems to indicate that the major part of this dust comes from the blasting. We don't think that's correct. The dust that is created is primarily from the movement of equipment in the quarry on the haul roads and the trucks that come in and get loaded and come out. All the trucks that leave the quarry are supposed to go through the sprinkler to wet down their loads so they don't carry the dust out. In the quarry, we regulate a regular dust suppression system. They water the roads on a regular basis, but a lot of that depends on weather. A lot of it depends on a hot, windy day. If the wind's blowing so that it's blowing not towards the river, but towards the houses close by. They're going to sense that. And the watering, even though it's done more regularly on a hot day, it's obviously not perfect. The corporation is intent to make that better and try and control that dust a little bit as best it can, but there are practical limitations in being able to do that. There's another allegation that property has had rocks thrown from quarry operation. Trappist is going back through the records, and for the last 10 years, we don't have any complaints of that. If it happens, we want to know about it. We want to know when it happens. We want to know what time it happened, and we want to know where the property is, so we can deal with what happened and correct it. But if we're not told, and years and years go by, and they say, "Oh well, we had rock on our property," well, that makes it very difficult for the company to respond to that. The company wants to be a good neighbor, but there are limitations given the nature of the work. We do have regular monitors, and as Ms. Woods alluded to, 3 months ago we had the company retained an independent company to add another monitor to monitor each, and it's done automatically. So there right now are 2 monitors for every blast. And that's part of the blast report. The independent monitor just verifies the results of the monitor that the corporation operates, and at least to date, they are consistent with one another. Ms. Woods mentioned that you can't test for the vibration if you don't put the monitor inside the structure. The reality is that all the standards and all the studies, you don't put the monitor inside the structure, you put it adjacent and out immediately outside to check the vibration level. Because every structure has its own vibration tendency regardless of outside forces that are caused by the movement of the structure and just by the way the structure is built. And the standards allow for a mathematical calculation to adjust for that. So we think we try and do the best, the corporation tries to do the best it can. Everybody is stressed for the importance of that. If people have specific complaints, they need to call us and tell us. And to the extent that they can deal with them, they will address it and deal with it. Thank you.
Board members?
I have a question. So how would a neighbor get a test on their property if they're interested?
I'm sorry?
How would a neighbor get a test for their property if they're interested?
I didn't hear what you, a test?
Test.
Yeah.
If they have a complaint that their property is being adversely affected, they notify the quarry, and the quarry can, with the property owner's permission, can place a monitor on the property, and we can determine, based on when the test results, they can read the monitor, and then the calculation can be made as to whether there's any possibility of any. We have done a number of those tests on different properties around the area, and they've all basically said any damage that's been caused to the building. And a lot of these houses in that area are fairly old, and houses move with weather, humidity, temperature, just the natural working of any stick-built structure. And at least as far as we know, there has been no confirmed damage to any of these buildings by the vibration caused by the blast.
If I could add, the best place to monitor is actually on the property line before, in line with whomever it is. So we don't need to go to their house to find out if we're doing damage to their house or not. If we're closer to our property line, then we'll get a reading that is going to, we can mathematically figure out if there's any, if our reading is below the standard, it's going to be below as it continues towards their house. That's what I'm trying to say. So we gladly go over and do that, but it truthfully doesn't serve as much purpose as one thinks, because if we're on our property line and we know what's being transmitted off of our property line, then we know we're within the regulations.
Joel?
Yeah, just a couple quick ones. Looking at the permit rather quickly, I'm had chances I did all of it, probably never will, but everything I see in here, and I may be missing it, talks about equipment. I don't think I see anything in here that talks about dust from blasting. Because it kind of defines stationary equipment as what the applicable law is, so what is an avenue, and maybe the state doesn't require testing for that from the blasting. But I just want that clarification out in the open if that's the case, because when I read in there, everything I see says it's all equipment.
So in this,
No, just a minute, I'm asking the presenters from Shelburne Line.
You're correct, that is exactly what that permit is saying.
Okay, so let's take that a little farther then. Well, I'm asking the questions right now, and he's answered yet that I'm correct. This permit is only for emissions from equipment.
Well, so what you're seeing there is emissions from equipment, but it is a general permanent air pollution permit for the facility.
Correct. But is there any testing that is done of dust after a blast? You said there was someone on site when all the tests were taking place and everything passed, and that's all great. First of all, you guys have been a great business in this town, so I have no complaints there. I'm just trying to help because we've got some people, 50+ names signed a piece of paper, and I'm trying to read through it, so I'm comfortable that yes, you're doing everything that the state requires, but does the state actually, were there any tests done of the dust that comes out from the blast? And I haven't been over to see a blast, and I'd like to go see it, if I could. So if it does emit a fair amount of dust, is there?
That was not part of the state when they were there.
Okay.
And what we do to mitigate that is we do put water down over the shop before we shoot it to try to reduce the amount of dust. We try not to shoot if the wind is blowing directly at the town. So, and then we try to work with the neighbors, and we had one neighbor who has asked us if we're in the area of that, her house, she likes to sleep in till noon, and so that we can we shoot after that, and we try to do that too. So there is when the state came, they did emission testing on equipment, opacity and VE testing, but there is no requirement in there to perform a blast.
Okay, so what I'm trying to get at is there is some dust from blasting that leaves the site. And see, now we have prevailing westerly winds pretty much in Swanton. It's going to be difficult sometimes when you're trying to get a shot in to have a day when the wind's not going to be blowing.
Yeah, we're not naive to which way the wind blows.
No, so we got a complaint, you're trying to, counter the complaint, and I'm reading there, and I'm gonna say there's probably dust that leaves that site. I've driven in there and bought stone and stuff. You guys do a great job of trying to get people to put water on their loads and cover their loads, but there is dust that leaves the site.
But to claim that the dust that's leaving the site is causing health issues is a claim that's just being made, but there's no facts behind it.
I'm not even disputing that right now. I'm not a health expert. There's other people who can help me just like that, and I agree about silicates, different rocks have more silicate, and that's certainly a carcinogen that's been talked about lately, but how that relates to yours, I'm not sure. All I'm saying is some dust leaves, which is a nuisance for some of the people living there. That's what we know right now. That's all. You're countering their argument, I just want to make it clear. I think some dust probably leaves the area.
I get, the only thing I would say is that, and Travis can maybe elaborate on this, the dust that's created by the blast is dependent on, first of all, it's not the volume of dust, because the blast they're basically only very intermittent, 3 or 4 times a week, so we're not talking, compared to the dust that's generated by the haul roads and by the emissions out of the crusher and that kind of thing, proportionally, and I don't know, but I don't, and it also depends on where the blast is. If you're blasting overburden, closer to the surface, you may have more apparent dust from that blast than if you're blasting 1 or 2 layers down into the solid rock. So to say there's a huge cloud of dust, I don't think that's an accurate statement. I've observed a number of different blasts in the quarry, and it's much more contained. I think a truck coming to pick up stone from one of the stone piles on a hot, windy day generates a lot more dust, even if the road has been recently watered down and dust controlled. So I think the quarry is making every effort to try and mitigate that, and will do what it can to decrease that. Not saying it doesn't happen, but they try and take every effort to avoid it.
I wasn't denying any of that.
Yeah.
And again, I want to go, if I can, go east and witness some of that, so it gives me a better perspective of what's taking place.
I want to go too.
And then we talked about the testing equipment. Is there one at the armory now, or was that just placed there at one point, or is that not?
It's not at the armory.
No.
It's on our property.
Basically on your boundary, so you're saying if the tests are lowered, I mean.
So it's a permanent seismograph.
Okay.
That comes online at 7 o'clock and shuts off at 5. It sends the data to, through a cellular data network. It's monitored by people in I believe, Atlanta, Georgia. And then as soon as the shot goes off, as long as the noise or the vibration trigger the level, it will record the event. And then it's monitored by the third party so that they know that it's working correctly. It does self-test and things like that. So it's not at the armory, it's on our property.
There may be one at the armory, we don't know.
Will Maynard told me there was one.
Yeah, I thought I heard something about one being at the armory.
Yeah.
It's on your property.
It's on our property, that's correct.
And has there ever been any talk of the foundations and how, I don't know what the depth of the soil is before rock under these foundations and stuff? Is there one? Are they pretty much right? Is it like 6-7 feet to the?
That varies, so I can't speak
I mean,
to
does it
that. Are
vary?
you asking what the depth would be between people's foundations and the actual?
Yeah, I mean, it seems how it's pretty much all rock where you're operating and they aren't very far from there. I'm wondering how much of that is transmitting,
I can't speak for that. The interesting thing is that we have an office right up in the front. We have personnel in the office at the scale house, and we shoot right there next to the office. And we haven't broken water lines, we haven't done anything to that structure that we're being accused of. And then when we take our seismograph information, and then we speak with the experts about the ground vibration, and we have our shots reviewed, and we do our timing and our milliseconds between rows, and all those things that go into performing a shot, we are well within all of our limits and not causing vibration or causing damage. So to be accused of causing of damage to structures that admittedly have been here for quite some time, that's a little bit of a challenge for us to accept.
fair enough. I just had a couple of questions, I'm all set. So, Mr. Chair, thank you. Thank you, Chris. Anybody else?
Have we ever had any questions or zoning concerns over this in the past that you know of, Dave, or anybody?
No, I asked Amy, and she said that because it's been there for so long, that the zoning doesn't apply either, like Act 250. So they're grandfathered in on that also.
Okay. And now that one or more over than the other, have you ever went to any of the closest residents while they blasted or shot and feel what they're feeling? Not that they're not feeling nothing, but just to get a sense of what and how they feel when it does happen?
Inside their house?
No, even outside on the property while they're there, just to say, okay, let me go over why we do this, let me feel and understand what you're feeling.
Yeah, we did it,
For Ms. Woods?
Okay, that's all.
We went there and we set the monitor up. We did it 4 times, it triggered it once, and then 3 times it didn't trigger.
I mean, because I know where she lives, have you ever done that to any of the houses on Jewett Street or Upper Ferris that are, I mean, immediately in your backyard? Because they must feel something.
Yeah, no, I believe so.
Yeah,
We call people before we shoot.
okay, nice.
If we're asked to. We've been told that the alarm that we sound the horn startles them more than the shot does, for some people. Everybody's different. And I guess what we want to make the point is that we are not sitting here saying that Ms. Woods does not feel the shot in her house. That's not what we're even remotely saying. But the frequency of her house, that we all have in our house, we have a frequency. And that frequency is a very low number in houses. And when she's in that house and we shoot, if we trigger a PPP above 0.01, I believe it is, then she has the possibility that she's going to feel it. But that doesn't mean we're doing any damage to her house.
Right.
And that's the point that the monitors are for, is to give us those numbers, so that we know and protect us for future situations just like this. But also, if we see that we're elevating those numbers, then we need to go back to the explosive companies, and then we need to work with them to figure out why we are having these increasing ground levels, which we do. Geology in the quarry is different from one end of the quarry to the other. The stone, black stone versus white stone, it's all different. The frequencies, the higher the frequency, the less they're going to feel it. And obviously that's what we work for when we design the shop.
Crystal, do you know if any of the residents have complained on here? I lived on First Street I no longer do, but I lived there for 15 years. What I felt a lot of shaking, the part of the reason I moved off, it was the tractor trailers coming down through, hitting their Jake brake. And I had cracks in my walls, and I'm not discounting what you're saying by any means. There may be some of that from the tractor trailers coming down Grand Avenue and hitting that, and some of these ripples in the roads and shaking, not discounting any of them. But I think maybe part of that contributes to some of that, not just the blast.
So, to answer what you're saying is, I didn't have any damage prior to them buying Upper Ferris Street, just so you know that. I had no damage whatsoever. The damage did not occur until they started, when they bought Upper Ferris Street, and the blasting got, I guess, heavier, where you could feel it. I never used to be able to feel it like that. It's different. You have to be in the house to see what we all as people are seeing. I'm not the only one that's saying I have damage. There's a woman on Grand Avenue that has broken windows.
I certainly believe you.
I'm not making that up. They're the ones coming. When I went to ask them if they wanted to sign a petition, nobody is forced, coerced, or paid off or anything like that. And the people didn't know where to go. So they never lodged complaints because they didn't know what to do. And as far as, again, I don't want to, but this operating permit here, this doesn't protect any of the people. There's no setback limits. As far as they're on page 12, it says, if you look at section C, if you guys have the operating permit, the ambient air quality impact evaluation, based on the level of emissions from the facility, this is not anticipated to cause or contribute to a violation of any ambient air quality standards or significantly deteriorate air quality. Therefore, an air quality impact evaluation was not required by the agency for the proposed project. So they didn't even test it. That's what it's saying, right there, for this particular item on the permit. Most of this permit, where it talks about equipment, but it doesn't talk about dust, rock spray, setback limits of anything that protects any of the people that live in the area.
I'd like to comment on that.
Yeah.
Well, that's not how I read that paragraph. That paragraph is saying because of the test they've already got, they don't have to do an air quality impact evaluation. It's
The
because
emissions of
because the
from the
levels
equipment.
are already so low. That's what that paragraph, that's what I read that.
Okay, well,
If it had triggered something that was over the impact limits, then they would do a study to see how that's affecting.
Correct.
So
maybe that's correct.
That's the way I read
I
it.
read it the same way, based on the level of emissions from this facility is not anticipated that it would cause. That's how I read it.
Yeah, so they didn't go with a further study, but that's,
Okay.
Nicole, any questions?
No?
I'll just say I'm a contractor, go in there numerous times a week, in and out of your court, been in there numerous times and blasted. I was over at the school the other day when we let off shot, every morning, very minimal. You know, you guys are always watering the road, moving in and out of there, yeah. You know, when the balloon blows, yeah, there's probably dust swirling, but, I've been in there, you guys blasted, and I haven't seen blooms floating through the air, you know what I mean? I've been in the places where the sky's clouded when they went off a shot, you know? I don't have anything else, but I thank you guys for coming out and answering these questions.
I have a couple of questions, is that okay?
Yep.
My name is Michelle Nordberg. I do not live in that area, and I'm not a vested party in the complaint or anything. I just have a couple of questions, because I am a regulatory compliance auditor, so I absolutely appreciate the regulations that your industry requires. I do not have a copy, I don't have visibility to the documents you handed out, so I understand, one, that you say that a couple employees wear measures to measure the particulates, is that correct? Did I understand that correct?
Only if they do, the MSHA does a test for particulates.
Yes, but you're saying employees wear these during a blast, or it's just during a test?
No, just when the MSHA inspector is on site.
I see. So some industries require these on a regular basis?
Yeah, no, ours does not.
Okay. And then the one document that you referenced documented the time of your blast. Does it also document location and wind direction? Because you were talking about wind direction.
Yeah, there's a GPS coordinates of where the blast is and what the wind direction is.
So I wonder if, that also provides some additional information about which wind direction towards these communities that are of concern. And if you're making a judicious decision to not blast because of wind direction. I'm just asking that question. If wind is prevailing towards these concerned communities, are you changing your decision to blast and postponing it until the wind changes, the wind blows a different direction?
I think you just said that, we was talking about earlier, that they take that into factor for the blast, what the wind's blowing at the village, or...
But I just asked him the question, so I was asking him to respond, and,
Yeah, that's okay.
And he's pondering it, and...
Well, no, I want to make sure I understand. Are you saying that if the wind is blowing into the town, will we blast or not blast? Is that what you're asking?
That is the question, yes.
And are we, in my answer to that question would be, we make every attempt that we can not to shoot if the wind is going into the town.
Okay. So it's not as conclusive as you kind of suggested. It is a consideration, but it's not a decisive hard stop. The wind is in that prevailing direction. It is not a hard stop. That's all I was asking. And then my question to the community is, what is the ask? What is your ask, given all that you're hearing today about what the regulations and all of the procedures that they are observing, monitoring, taking into consideration? What would be the ask? What would you like to see differently? What are you asking
They
for?
could use less charge, they can back off from the area that they're blasting that's so close that it's causing the vibrations. There are some choices. There's different types of charge and explosives that they could use. Maybe they find something that it doesn't, doesn't ricochet as much for the vibrations.
Thank you for the opportunity.
I just got one other question, is you made the statement that you note wind and all this, so there would be something different other than this?
That's
This is just handwritten?
to prove that we don't last all day.
Okay.
It's on this mark,
Attached
which
to the
says the
complaint.
wind and...
Okay.
The second page is
Yep.
a copy of the blast
Okay.
report.
Yep.
And that's done for each blast.
Okay. Oh, I see. Yep, I see now.
Yeah, when you-
I was looking at that, that's why I was questioning. Okay. Yep, all right.
If you look at the blast report, it has all that details, it has the
Okay.
Yeah, when
latitude, longitude, location of the blast.
Yeah, I did see that one after, thank you.
Yes, coordinates,
And so there's a log of the blast for each corresponding to
Yeah,
here.
we have a blast report. for
Okay.
each one of the-
Perfect.
We figured you had enough paper for tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah. Crystal, have you called the state and talked to their quality department?
I talked to a woman named, because originally I called the Swanton Village to see what I could do, and they directed me to Mr. David over there, because that they were not responsible for any of that. But he also gave me the number to the Environmental Conservation Group. I spoke with a woman named Michelle Stickler. She was gonna check into it with Act 250, but I haven't heard that from her recently.
No, I'm just
She was-
encouraging you, if you got, some questions about air quality and carcinogens and that sort of thing.
I did
you might
reach
talk-
out to
You might
some
talk
people.
to the air quality division versus just internet research and stuff. And that would be one of my recommendations.
I did, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. And then, we've got this petition we're gonna have to answer at some point, and we've got some, very certain things in the petition saying are happening, and we've got, evidence saying it's not, as far as blasting all day. So, I don't think tonight we're gonna solve it, but.
Yeah, no. Did you have anything else?
So would it be fair to say that Crystal would hear back from us pertaining to this petition? Is that a fair statement?
Yeah.
I just don't want to leave you hanging. That's all.
We got 50 people who sent something, the applicant answered this.
Okay. Well, that's why I said, I don't want her to leave not getting some kind of answer that we will get back with.
No, I would point out two things. One is that Ms. Woods copied this petition to the air quality people and also to the EPA. Air quality administers the federal regulation on air quality for the state of Vermont. So they have copies of this, and we expect that, like all complaints that go to them, we will hear from them, and they will review all the records and all the data. Secondly, I don't want to get into a jurisdictional argument, but I'm not sure that the select board of the town has authority that is asked for in the petition. As indicated, I think we're pre-existing use long before zoning became effective. Zoning would be one possibility if it applied, but I don't think it does. Act 250, we believe we're exempt because, again, it's pre-existing. And I think the authority of the town is somewhat limited. As I said, we're more than willing, if the select board members want to observe a blast, we can, that can be coordinated with Trampus. The corporation will continue to make every effort to try and minimize these impacts. We realize that there are impacts. I mean, there is some dust created, and they try and do what they can to alleviate that. And, they will continue to do that. And if there's something specific that we can do, that it's in the realm of practicality, the corporation will do that.
And the only thing I would add to that would help Joe and I, and Ms. Wood says that she's not interested in shutting us down, but in this document, she said that she'd like the select board to shut the court.
Yeah.
So
That was not said.
it's in writing in the document here. So all I would ask is if you do have an issue, let's get the facts. Because we can't answer this. Because it's too vague. We don't know what we're asking. There's dust. Okay, well, what particle matter are we talking about? How much are we talking about? What dates are we talking about that happen? And those are the type of things that we're more than willing to work with the town and answer the questions and educate the town, ourselves, and the residents that have concern. Because what happens is this is going to be not just one event, it's going to be multiple events in which we're going to have to all learn about ground vibration and how it works and how we feel it, but we don't damage our property. But water does more damage to our properties than any glass that we make. So I would challenge the petitioners, if you will, to identify what items that they really have for an issue with facts, that then Joe and I can get those facts back and give you the proper answers. Because other than that, we're just gonna go around in a circle here for a long time.
I fully agree with that, and I appreciate the willingness to work and try to sort out and get to the bottom of some of this. I think we should have David prepare a draft response.
Yeah.
It won't all be correct yet, but so the next meeting, we can at least start looking at draft response, because some of this stuff we're not gonna do.
Yeah.
We can't do. And I agree that some of it's out of our purview anyway. But then there's other things that we can put in there that you're willing to take somebody's complaint and review it and respond to it, as you gave us an example of one right here.
We do it now.
Yeah, you do it now, and so what I heard was people don't know that they can make a complaint. Well, tonight it's made very clear that there's a log and that complaints are investigated, so there's things that can be added in a response to the petition.
This one sleeps in till noon, so they don't blast over there that time of the day, or different things.
I mean, we obviously, we're not bound to what we try to do, but we try to be a good neighbor. No matter what we do and how good a neighbor we want to be, we're still not a very desirable neighbor to have. Let's just face it, that's the business we're in. The fact of the matter is, and unfortunately, we all need what that mineral is in that quarry. Not just for driveways, not just for ready mix and things like that, but we need it for feed grade line. We need it for all the chickens that we feed, in New England, for their egg benefit. And we have identified a material that's in the quarry for the previous subject that you guys are working on that actually manages phosphorus in the land. So it'll be interesting to see where that takes us, but it could actually help the town solve another issue. But the lady was 100% correct. You can't solve it here. You have to solve it up in all the fields that's leaching the phosphorus down into the lake. And our mineral does that. So, and that's all proprietary stuff that we're working on. But it's going to be interesting to see how that all plays out and the relationship that we end up with in the town as we move forward, because it is a big deal and it is a big problem, not just in this state, but all over the country. So we are more than willing to work with anybody that is willing to be reasonable and to work with us, but we can't receive this at 4:45 and be prepped to sit in front of you folks and give you answers.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for your information tonight and for the fast preparation. I know it's not easy to pull that documentation together. I do, as you invited concerned citizens and petitioners to give you information, file complaints, if you will. What is your complaint process? Do you have a complaint hotline? Do you prefer a form? That might be information that could be going into some letter or select board response.
Currently, because we don't receive that many complaints, we certainly don't have a hotline. But we do have a phone number that's in the phone book. And upon receiving that information, Willie Maynard, this would suggest that we'll contact and then we will investigate and write up a formal complaint report. If there's a complaint in which we receive that has property damage or bodily injury, then obviously that's going to be passed on to our insurance company as we're required to do, and then a full investigation will take place.
Okay. Thank you. Hi, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Good night, thank you.
Thank you, Crystal.
Set 2020 tax rate.
Okay, in front of you, you have,
Page 23.
oh yeah,
And this is the one
it's in
you
front of me.
signed, right?
Yeah, one of them.
Is it in our packet?
Yeah.
There it is.
So the proposed tax rates for 2020 tax year for residential is 1.8118, for non-residential is 2.0092. Based on the calculations over last year, the education for residential rate went up 2%, the non-residential rate for education went up 4%, and our municipal tax rate went up 3%. That's how, if you want to know, that's basically how it's calculated. The difference, well, it's calculated over our budget, but I'm just giving you the difference, the increases between last year and this year.
Any questions, guys?
No.
Need a motion to approve that then, right? Looking for a motion to approve the new tax rate for 2020.
I'll make the motion to approve the 2020 tax rate is shown to us tonight on page 23 of our packet.
I'll second it.
Any other discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you. Let's see, discuss solar lighting proposal 25.
That's me, James.
Yep, what I did.
This was on the agenda at the last meeting. And I contacted Reggie after the meeting and asked him for a price on what it would cost to put a lamppost there to keep the caboose lit up, so hopefully it would prevent vandalism. And they did take a look at it. He went there with one of his folks, and they decided that just putting in a standard pole and lamp with wiring would be too expensive. So he suggested what you see in the packet, a solar-powered motion light, powered by, the battery's powered by the sun, and it only lights up when there's motion going by. And he said it's brighter than one of their standard street lights. So I let Ron know about it, and he sounds interested in it, so he's here tonight, and he can, express what he thinks of it. And the price is on the page here that shows the solar panel. It was, I think it's $875
and $30 for bracket.
Yep. And he also said he had a nice lamppost that it could be put on, like a historic style, I think, if we were interested. So I'll yield to Ron.
Ron, it's your book.
Well, I would just say I always like ideas that aren't my own, and this wasn't mine. This came from a collaboration, I believe, of Joel and the building manager, perhaps someone from the electrical department.
Yeah.
So they came up with this proposal. I've seen it. I do like it. I acknowledge that it could be something that would help not just the historical society because we own the caboose, but the entire town because you and we own that property, which is about 2.5 acres. As you know, it's more than a caboose. It's as the sign says, it's a transportation museum. So anything that is protected from that kind of mistreatment, I think is a good idea. So that's about all I have. Unless you have questions for me.
No. Do we have any funding for the? I know we put funding aside for.
There's money in the line item for the depot.
There's enough to cover $1,000, a little less than
Yeah,
that.
there is.
Yeah.
Oh, speaking of that, how much money is in that line item?
You can call me in the morning, I'll tell you.
The reason I bring that up is Ron, and I talked about repairs down there.
Yep.
And Ron brought an estimate tonight to do the repair to the site and at the depot and to do the bridge railing repairs on the east side of the bridge, the railings that lead up to the bridge for $1145 is the estimate.
Got 1,100.
1,100,
Okay.
yeah, so $145. And if it isn't in that line item, I think we should take it out of the park B sale. If we had to, we use that money.
I think there's enough
Things at
money.
the library, was that?
There is enough money, because we budgeted 11,000, we haven't used it yet.
Okay. Yeah, I would recommend we.
Do we need a couple estimates on that repair stuff, or?
For that amount?
Yeah, we're good. That's not a big number, I don't worry about it.
I was down, I walked the path yesterday, and some of that rock that's on the bridge going into it, I certainly think that we should be taking care of that, but I think we should be doing some better prevent maintenance on that, getting that maybe pressure washed and stained, and just letting it rot away.
Actually, Joel talked about that last week.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I think that future-wise, we really need to do a better job of prevent maintenance on it. My other question is, I guess just to Ron, is does the Historical Society or the depot have any funds put aside for anything? Not that we're not footing the bill, it's just more of a curiosity question.
Well, that's kind of a personal question.
It is.
But the answer to the question is yes, we do.
Okay.
Not much though.
Okay, fair enough. Okay.
We took over maintenance of that a couple of years back, right? It was.
Is that building owned by the town?
Yep,
Who owns that? The town
The
owns
town.
that building? Okay.
And the land.
So like the library, okay.
owns the land too.
But you take over 100% of the maintenance of the transportation, but only the outside of the library?
That's something different. We ain't even gonna talk about that, we're talking about the tree control rate.
Yep. That was just more of a curiosity question.
Well, we get an agreement that was.
Yep.
signed.
Yeah, there is a maintenance
And
agreement.
that should be something that all of the board members get, because it's
Okay.
been so many years now, I don't remember all the details.
No,
It'd be good to get that
a
out.
few years probably, yeah.
Get everybody up to speed on what the agreement is between the Historical Society and the town. For the lights themselves, is the village willing to put the pole up? All we've got for a price right now is $875 and $30.
I'd have to
Doesn't
check.
say anything about.
Yeah, I'd have to check. In the email, he mentioned the pole, but he didn't say whether he was giving it or selling it, so I'll check with him.
Yeah, my thought is they're probably giving it, willing to help us put the thing up, but it'd be nice to clarify that. And I'm all for.
We make a motion to approve those two things. then.
I think $800 is a lot of money. I'm just gonna say that. I think that, I looked up some prices, and if you got a fancy solar panel light, it was $600 at Lowe's.
600, and this one's only 175.
That one's $200 more.
Yeah, it's probably a lot different too.
Well, I'm just thinking about the taxpayers, and I'm thinking, we can get a solar light, and I guess I don't understand. I tried looking around to see why we couldn't get a $30 motion light, like, I have it on my house or whatever. I guess we're trying to focus the light in a specific area that there's no electricity, is that what the issue is? And,
Yeah, there's no electricity there, that's why they're talking solar, so nothing, motion light or any of that would.
The $30 light at your home is maybe 60 watts or 80 watts or something. This is 250 watts. This is
It's like a street light.
more an industrial item versus a residential item. That's one of the reasons for the difference in the cost.
And some of those cheaper lights you get in the store, they last maybe a year and then they burn out, so you're throwing your money away.
This recommendation came from the power company,
we hope that they know what they're
I guess I'd also like to look at the, what's the MOU of the Historic Society, do they have one of those, of our
We have an agreement.
agreement before we look, we accept this?
It's not an MOU though.
Unless we just
We have,
cover 100%.
that's our agreement that we maintain the,
Except for the computer, I think they pay for that and the service, but the town covers the other stuff.
Emergency service. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll get a copy of that to you, Heather.
I asked
You
for
know,
the
yeah, I'll give it to everybody.
I'll make
Thank
a
you.
motion that we spend the $905 for the solar light and the $1145 for the estimate to repair the exterior of the depot and to do the railing repairs on the approach to the bridge on the east side.
I'll second it.
second. Any other discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
Thank you very much.
Yep. Thank you, Ron. Coming down.
This is for hopefully the first people having fun at night at the.
Yes, it's very important.
6,
And when is-
economic development update.
What is the meeting?
Any walk,
I'll give you two.
audit inventory update.
Glad to
Okay, great.
Thank you.
So quiet over there.
Okay.
bring your kids to.
I don't know, you're there sometimes.
He's got a running toy training.
Here.
Right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so, we talked last meeting, 2 weeks ago, about the walk audit. It's basically going through the village and the town, naming the village. We are starting the Healthy Community Task Force, is starting that tomorrow. We are still looking for volunteers to walk. We will provide the materials. They have a handy, Rise Vermont has a handy kit, and we will provide all the materials. If you just reach out to me or to Betsy Foyner, I can get the email address. We are happy and looking for volunteers. It'll be posted on Front Porch Forum and a few other places as well. And I have a flyer that kind of explains what we're doing. I know you can't see it, but it will be out on the website and on Front Porch Forum with contact information. And we're starting that tomorrow with rain or showing. I hear there's a 30% chance of rain, so we may get wet, but that's okay. The goal is to identify gaps in the sidewalk inventory or where we need to do repairs so that the town and the village can prioritize projects going forward. That kind of came about because of the McQuam Shore advocacy that was done, and trying to be proactive instead of reactive on maintaining and improving our sidewalk inventory. Buy local grant program, I have visual aid on that as well. So I don't know how many saw the announcement that there's a local Buy Vermont that is funded through the CARES Act. The program will begin incentivizing purchases on September 8th via a limited time $30 Buy Local Vermont offer. And businesses, and this flyer I just got will be posted, and again, Front Porch Forum, we're going to take it to businesses. You can go nift.com/Vermont. I don't know if you can see that. So businesses can sign up, and it does not say how you get the $30 gift card. So if you have questions, go to vermont@gonift.com. And again, I will have this posted, just got this, but it is a limited time incentive for buying local. On a more local level, the State of Vermont Agency of Commerce and Community Development has a Restart Vermont Regional Marketing and Stimulus Grant Program. They've come up with a longer name. It is $10,000. It does not have a match, and the SCP, Swanton Enhancement Project, applied for the $10,000. And all of the $10,000, if we get it, we go to $520 gift cards that would look similar to this. Little swan carrying a shopping bag, and I will have to tell you that was my idea, and I'm normally not that creative. I did not do this, obviously Main Street Graphics did. So this was what the card we are anticipating it would look like. The idea is to pass out the gift cards, should we get the grant, to community members in need, working with the tribal council, the local schools, faith groups. We would want to target, first off, community members in need. So it would be free to them. And then if that goes well, then we would look at doing a traditional gift card program where people would actually purchase the cards to use as gift cards. Suzanne Washburn, who is with the chamber, she reached out to a number of businesses in the village. She was walking, so she had businesses in the village last week, and she said everybody was really interested. They weren't sure, depending on the business, how somebody could use their gift card, but they were interested in the program to be part of the network that people could use the cards. That application deadline was very quick. We had a week and a half to turn it around. We should hear late September. All the money has to be spent through the gift cards by November 15th. So the whole thing is very quick. But that's good time for holidays, and if any business is participating, then you can use it there. It's not like you have to use it at a certain business. You can use it at any participating business. So there will be more information on that. Any questions so far? All right, the downtown scoping study, very important. Pull out your pens and your piece of paper. September 17th, 6 o'clock to 7:30. It will be via Zoom because we are asking for a large participation. This is the downtown Grand Avenue, First Street intersection, down Merchants Row scoping study to figure out how to fix that traffic pattern for motorists, bicyclists, and pedestrians. So there will be much more information. The flyers should go out this week. But it is a Wednesday. Is it a Wednesday?
Thursday.
Thursday, thank you. September 17th, 6 to 7:30 via Zoom. So please, again, we are looking for as much community input as we can get because that's a huge project. Other updates, what I didn't include was the diversity training that the town and the village are working on. The RFP has been out, and I think at the last meeting I noted that there were 2 out-of-state organizations that had reached out with some questions, and both are going to provide proposals to do in-person or to do virtual, which I was a little surprised that somebody from Alabama wants to come up and do, because that's a haul, but they're still interested in doing in-person. So that deadline is September 15th, and so we'll update you at the probably the 1st October. I'm not here at the next select board meeting, if you recall, so we'll update at the 1st October meeting and go from there. I think those are my updates. Let me run through, if you don't mind, real quick. Anything else? Hang on just a second, Sandy. Okay, yes, ma'am.
So just another update, an exciting one for economic development is that we have 2 new co-chairs, Debbie Winters and Darcy Benoit of the Economic Development Task Force.
I didn't know that. Good.
Thank you.
All right, so
Anything else, Elizabeth?
that is it for me, and again, you know I'm out.
Nicole, what was the other one?
7 Highway, Joel.
Debbie Winters.
Oh, just real quick, the paint is in for the striping, so they can finish the remainder of the striping. That's the striping that we are doing. I've not heard of a date for the state to finish theirs. Like they went up Parkway up BB Road and they stopped because they ran out of paint.
Mine, state.
They said it's because of the paint. And there has been a real problem getting paint. A lot of it comes from country across the ocean.
Yeah.
They just mowing is, James, you and I talked about, is back in operation. It's actually out of West Swanton.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Yeah,
Tabor Road needed it.
Yeah, they got delayed because of the fix they had to do after they got the rotary mower fixed, and they were starting to use the iron mower and found something broken on that too, so anyway, it's all,
Will they be able to catch up, Joel, and get it all done right?
Yeah, I was down on Calm Shore last week, and Gary was down there, did a nice job.
Yeah.
Way back.
better than the state, which if you drive on Route 7 and see where they knock some trees down, and it looks terrible.
Oh, isn't that beautiful, by the bridge, yeah.
Yeah.
I guess they don't want to.
Matter of fact, that would be one to talk to.
What's that? The mower?
Where the state did some clearing along Route 7, south of Grand Avenue, and knocked trees down and stuff, and it just looks terrible.
Oh, yeah, they excavated, what they did.
Is that what they did?
Yeah, I watched them when I went by.
Yeah, and they just left it, it looks like a half.
Just piled it up, left it there.
Yeah, there's a few spots on Route 7 that just. They've been chasing a few beavers off Beatty Road, still continuing repairs to the vehicles, nothing serious, but trucks will all be ready for the winter, and they're getting ready to go out and start cutting back shoulders for drainage purposes and stuff over the years that builds up. So Pat's off this week, the other three are in. One thing I wanted to bring up, we don't need to spend a lot of time talking about it right now, but they are trying to clean the yard up some. It's not a high priority, so they get to it when they can. The previous foreman took over 20 pallets of bricks when the brick factory was closing down, and they ended up in the highway department lot. We have no use for them. Bricks don't match what's on our town office, so we're not gonna use them to repair that over time. I know there's some interest from some of the highway guys to take some of the pallets, but it's gonna be something the board decides, I guess. We didn't pay anything for them. Technically, they do have some value, but maybe the next meeting, we can figure out what we can do or not. Or give them to the employees, but as Kevin said, there's 20 plus pallets.
A lot there.
Oh, no.
We should never taken them.
Community brick oven? Oh, community brick oven?
What's that?
Community brick oven.
There you go.
Well, anyway,
I don't know
we got
if
lots
some
of
of them
bricks.
are.
And that's all I have right now. I think I told you last time that the sand shed's full, so.
Yep.
Perfect. And then put all salt and ready for it.
James, I called, or emailed John Wilkin from District 8 about the center line striping on South River. He said he hasn't heard a thing from the other state division that does it. So he has no idea when they're gonna be able to do it.
I want to add something on our highway. You talked about calling Jim Coda about the tree mess. When you come off the end of the Bond Road onto 105, I mean, if you're coming down 105, not turning on Bond Road, there's ruts in the road there that have been there for about 2 years that are pretty deadly, pretty dangerous.
Was that the one you come around the corner?
Yeah.
I hit that the other day, my truck went.
Oh, yeah.
My truck almost went sideways.
I've watched Steve on trucks go over and go sideways,
Yeah.
and no one seems nothing about it. I'd like an answer from somebody.
That's in 105 itself?
No, 105 and Pond Road, right at the.
Oh, where they intersect?
Right at the intersection.
It's in there right away.
Yeah, it's in there right away, it's not.
Yeah, it's dangerous, I get that.
Yep. I just hit it Sunday.
Hit it when it's wet.
Yep.
And you watch the cars go by, they go on the edge of the pond road and go around it. Everyone knows how bad it is. It's been like that for 2 years, and I've complained and nobody does nothing about it. No.
Why don't we prep a letter for the state?
Yeah.
Be a lot better to put in writing that we consider the
Here's a formal.
serious safety hazard.
Yeah, it is, yeah. And I don't understand why no one's done anything about it. And I've seen the old state trucks go over it and jump around itself.
You prep a letter.
Priorities.
Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. Any other necessary business?
Can we back up for just a second?
Talk about what?
Is it worth checking with TAC to see if there's some reason that they haven't done that yet? I can do that tomorrow. They may have a project to do something there.
Oh, no, there ain't no project. They just need it.
District should be out there, it's itself,
Yeah.
it's a hazard.
Yeah. Thank you, all. A, discuss task assignment for the select board.
Very last page.
Last page.
Take care. Turn it over.
There we go.
There you are. Last of the last.
Well, we'll start at the top, and we're down the list. Highway Commissioner. That's Joel. Joel's second. Yeah,
What's that?
That's vacant.
that's gonna be vacant, yeah. 30 September.
Yeah, I was just projecting ahead there on that one.
Yep.
But if I may suggest, I think, I know Joel, you and I have talked a few times before, but I think with your knowledge and experience of the highway, I think at this time, I would advocate that you probably slide into that role when the time comes. That's just me.
Thank you, appreciate that. Glad you said that.
I'd like to learn and understand it.
Yep.
If I could, but.
Absolutely.
That's what I,
Yep. Do we have to make a motion on that, David, or just afterwards? Do we have to make a motion?
It wouldn't hurt, just to have it in the record.
Let's just do them all at the end. I think that's
Yeah,
what
you could do them all at once.
Yeah. All right. Police Commissioner. I would like to do it.
I'd be interested if nobody else wants to take it. It's fine.
Make a, I guess, motion or appointment for Mark to be the, recommendation for Mark to be the police commissioner. Everybody else good with that?
yep.
Are we making motions right now, or I thought we were doing those?
Just recommendations.
Okay.
We're just recommending, we're gonna vote at the end.
Make it a nomination.
Make a nomination, there we go. Couldn't find the right word. Mark's already direct, so we'll go with let's Heather. Personnel rep. That'd be something you'd be interested in?
Absolutely.
Okay, I'll make a recommendation to, have to read down the old names here. Nicole, do that. Legal rep.
Hey, Mark, you want to trade the rec, and then you want to take something else, like animal?
Well, he's already the rec.
You put that and take something else.
But then I could do economic development and then rec.
That's fair, I'll take the legal rep then.
So you're gonna give up doing the rec?
Yeah,
Okay.
just letting Betsy know. I try to attend these quarterly meetings.
I just feel like those are more up to my speed,
Okay.
honestly.
Where are we, somewhere? The last one for the best, animal control.
Have you had prior experience with that?
I don't know nothing about it, never done it. I have my hands full with the highway, I don't really want to step
Mark,
up
do you want,
to
or Nicole, do you want to do the animal control?
I can do animal control.
Thank you.
I tried.
Thank you for taking that. All right.
I'll make a motion that we accept the select board tasks that were just agreed upon.
Yep.
I'll second.
Okay. I'm just gonna read them.
Yes, please.
Yes.
Can I, does it need to be clarified that you're taking over immediately, or does it Joel as of September or October 1st?
I'm taking over in Joel, it's the last day.
So does the motion need to reflect that?
Yeah, we can do that. All right. So I got the motion, the second, and that's the task with the understanding that the highway commissioner is having Joel's on his resignation on 30th. Highway Commissioner James, Police Commissioner Mark, Recreation Rep Heather, Economic Development still Heather, Personnel Rep would be Nicole, Legal Rep Mark, and Animal Control Rep would be Nicole. Any other discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, guys.
And first, one of those will be able to give away in October.
What?
One of those we'll be able to give to somebody else in October. Because it'll be a new position.
Yeah, we can, but, yeah. Usually because we're just signing it.
Three people have two jobs.
We were worried about that at that point. Yeah. Correspondence, David? You don't have any?
Well, just what we already discussed.
You gave me this letter, email, I guess I can see it, must just came today.
That's one from Chris Yates.
Mr. Yates.
Yeah, that's, came in a half hour before the meeting. He has to have it read into the record.
Yeah. Yeah, I can read it. the right thing, sorry. It reads, "Good afternoon, David. I never received a response from the select board members that received the email and correspondence." Well, this is your email dated Tuesday, September 1st, 2020 at 5:19 p.m. We received your email, Mr. Yates. Very concerned with the current and progressively worsening water quality conditions here in northern McQuam Shore. I will be requesting a tax cut and such, or requesting a tax credit until such a time when the town and the state and federal agencies have resolved the issue. Can we please read this email in public record for me, as I'm unable to attend this evening's meeting? And this is just the same thing. Also, he goes on, the current conditions of water. Current conditions of the water in the northern Palm Shore areas are less than acceptable, and the borders of line is disgusting. The smell is comparable to the decomposing waste and rot. It becomes very intensive, overpowering in the hot and sunny days. The water quality along the shore is very poor compared to an old pea soup and an oil spill. Rotten weed, some will compare it to an open septic cesspool. You go out further, out in the bay, the water does clear up some, but it has a Coca-Cola tint to it. I'm inviting you all to come down and visit and smell and see yourself. I hope that you may have some knowledge and connections in various states and agencies to gain some attention to our issue. Signed, Chris Yates. Basically discussed this tonight at the meeting, what we talked about. I mean, there's no way of cutting anybody's taxes. This is not how it works, so there's a whole procedure for that. That's where it's one that's talked about it. You want to just, you can email them back, Dave, and let them know we talked about it. You guys seen the email.
Amy?
She was one that said when you need to, if you'd like to apply to have your tax lowered because you call it a good property, if there's a system in place for that, so it might be good to give her email to that person.
That's the only email we have for this meeting, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So they don't know how to,
What?
So if the email's given, then they'll know how to, get the right paperwork to move it forward. If that's what they wish.
I understand what you're
It would
asking.
go to the lister's office, provide the email to the lister's office.
Yeah.
So they know how to do the grievance process.
Yeah, that's, you can send that back in the email, David, just tell him that if he's looking for tax credit, and then you have to go through the grievance process, and they can contact the lister's office, give them the proper
But
information.
grieving your taxes don't go through the lister's office.
What's that?
Its value goes to the lister's office for a grievance hearing. Taxes is in the appeal to the BCA to have your taxes. It's two different things you're talking about. And I don't really know if they're really sure what they're asking. Some are asking for reduction in value, some are asking for a tax credit. If they want to abate their taxes, they have to write a letter to the BCA, and there's a criteria they have to fit in order to abate their taxes. But if they want to grieve their value, then by April 1st of next year, they have to write a letter to the listers requesting a grievance of their value, and then they have to go have a meeting with the listers, and then if they don't like what the listers tell them, then they go before the BCA. BCA holds a hearing, takes evidence, gives a decision, and then if they don't like the decision of the BCA, they can go on to the state, further. Yeah, it's all written, it's a process, it's been in place for a long time.
Is it on the website somewhere, or did you send it a link?
There's a whole book on it. We have a form letter that we can send to them.
That would be great.
Which we do to everyone who comes in the office who asks the procedure. It's a process we have.
Could use that form and email it to this person.
Yeah, exactly, this is right on here.
Michelle, do you have a question?
No, I was just referring to the last meeting. We did, in fact, it was discussed about having a standard response, because this is not going to be the only one that the board gets, and that, Kathy, recommended that there are two processes. It depends. You might have to have a response, one or the other, or both, and that there is a process, and identify that. So you don't have to, Dave, recreate the wheel every time you get one of these requests, whether by email or, but I was just trying to remind the board that you addressed this last week about having a response process, so that you don't have to deal with it at every meeting. It's not efficient. But anyway, that's.
Thank you.
David, this was, excuse me, this was an email sent to you that you sent to us?
This email, this right here, just came in.
Yeah, his email that he sent a half hour before the meeting
Right, but
tonight.
he's saying that prior he sent one and never got a
Yeah,
response.
he's claiming that he sent something, the one down below, I guess, on the
Right, so the
bottom,
first
There
email,
was an email, I remember a while back from him. just
to the
about-
board. There should
It
be a
wasn't
date.
about taxes or reducing this, it was about the quality of water down there.
where I was going, if it did mention the taxes in the first one, I don't remember seeing it.
No.
That's where the process should have place.
There wasn't any tax in that, it was about the state.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was actually on site, and I stopped down.
Yeah.
and took a look.
Okay.
Talked with him for a while.
Okay.
Can I just ask a qualifying question before public comments?
I'm gonna go to public comment in 1 second if you wanna just ask them.
Well, it doesn't relate to what the town clerk just said, but.
Oh, go ahead.
I'll wait.
No, go ahead real quick. Then
No, I understood you to just say that you have, that when people come in and ask about that, you have a letter that you give them that lays out the process?
When somebody comes in, depending on whether they're looking to abate taxes or agree their value, it's two different processes.
Right.
They have to write a letter
Yep.
and detail what they're looking for. And then, depending on what they're looking for, they will go, if it's taxes, then we schedule a hearing with our BCA members. They take evidence as to why they feel their taxes. There's a criteria you have to fit in order to do that, to abate your taxes. If the state has a criteria, you have to fit in that in order to abate your taxes. If you fit that criteria, then you're given the chance to come before the Board of Civil Authority, that's our BCA, which is our Justice of Peaces. We'll have a formal hearing where you will present evidence, and they will take evidence as to why you can't pay your taxes or why you want your, and then they'll make a decision and send you a formal letter in writing of their decision. If you're talking value, then that's something you do through the listers.
That's different, right?
You write a letter to the listers directly, and then they will schedule an appointment for you to come in and have your grievance hearing with them. If you don't like what happens in that grievance hearing, then you request a hearing before, once again, the BCA. So they do a hearing, you present your evidence, the listers present their evidence, they come up with a conclusion. If you don't like what their conclusion is, they do an inspection of the property, if need be, and they usually do. They have an inspection committee goes out, looks at the property, come back with their determination, and then a formal response is given to you. And then if you don't like that formal response, you can go to the state of Vermont, which that's another process. There's a fee for it, and then they'll send out an assessor, appraiser from their that they have, and then they'll hold a hearing. And then if they determine, if they go in favor of the lister's determination, then it will stay for 3 years before you can ever do anything again, I believe. And then if it goes in your favor, then you have the same, in that, whatever they figure the value. So they could lower your value, they could raise your value. It depends on what they see when they go there. And then once they do it, then it stays.
No, I thank you for that thorough explanation. Actually, that wasn't my question. I thought I heard you say that when somebody comes in, that you have a letter or something that you give them
We'll send a response and say that we've received your letter and we're scheduling a hearing for this date and this time, and then you'll come. And we'll send a letter first saying you've gotten your letter, what your actual request is, whether it's to abate tax or value, where the letters we're getting aren't really saying exactly what people want to do, whether they're talking taxes or value. It's not, some of them aren't clear. So that's why, I think, David, you did send out, or Amy sent a letter to somebody. But there is There is, and once you get the letter sent to you for the meeting, it tells you this is what you meet the criteria, or you don't meet the criteria. And you have the option to move forward or
Because
not.
that was what I was suggesting last time, it would be nice to know that, what the steps are gonna be in writing beforehand when you begin questioning, and that's what I thought you were saying tonight, that there is, that you've received our request. So again, and to the extent that you folks followed up on my concern about not receiving a response, I appreciate that. I just want to share tonight, though, that I'm not sure that I received a response to my application. I did receive a certified letter. It says that those taxpayers that have a change to their assessment for any reason receive a change of appraisal notice. Well, I haven't had a change to my assessment, so that first sentence to me doesn't apply to my issue at all. If you would like to grieve your assessment, please send a letter or email the lister. Well, in fact, as I just read, I had already done that. So
When did you send that letter?
my letter was dated August 5th. This letter response is August 19th. So, you know, it might be, and I apologize if it sounds like I'm talking semantics, but again, if you would like to grieve your assessment, please send a letter. Well, I did send such a letter, and so, and I haven't followed up with the lister, and I will. I just wanted to make you aware.
I'm just gonna say one thing, because I'm not going back and forth all day long. After the last meeting, the next day I called, spoke with the lister's office. I asked them to send you a letter saying whatever they needed to do to grieve your taxes or whatever, however you want to do it. They told me they hadn't received a letter from you. They had spoken to you, but hadn't received anything in writing. That was 2 weeks ago. So I don't know if they got one sent in or not, but they sent you a letter telling you what you needed to do, I believe. That's what I asked them to do.
Yeah, that's
So you
interesting,
got it.
that they're indicating they did
So
receive
you
a letter.
now know what you need to do, correct?
I'll resend my letter, and I'll also check to see if I didn't send it by email also at the time that I wrote it.
Okay.
I know that I brought the letter right to the Swanton post office for mailing,
Yeah,
so.
I don't know.
Yep.
They hadn't received a written letter from you, they told me, and I said, just send him a letter saying what he needs to do.
Very interesting. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else, public comment? Okay. Upcoming events. Labor Day, Monday, September 7th, town office and operations will be closed. Next select board meeting will be Tuesday, September 15th, 7 p.m. at the Village Complex. September Planning Commission has been canceled, meeting's been canceled. DRB meeting starting at 5:15, site visit BB Road, and then a 6 p.m. meeting at the Village Complex on Thursday, September 24th, 2020. Executive session. Did you get it? Nope. I'll look for a motion to adjourn. All right, any other discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?